You're alive.
All right, like to call to order the Board of Finance regularly scheduled meeting for Wednesday, February 12th. With the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I think we're gonna go through the things, but I think then we'll move the school up, and then we're gonna move Marcia up, Steve,
Yeah,
and
that's
get
okay.
Marcia out of here before any weather comes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. But
We'll
me.
go. We'll make you go. All right, so we'll
Look
go.
at my question.
Anybody here for public comment? Hearing no public comment, communications and correspondence.
Yep, we received emails from Denise Rice on January 7th, Irene Correa on January 10th, Andy Correa on January 13th and February 4th, and Robert Fischetto on February 5th.
Thank you. Approval of the meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes from January 8th of 2024.
I'll second.
2025.
Yes,
Sorry about
2025.
that.
I'll second with the correction.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion that we move the Board of Ed to next. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Ladies, please.
Right.
Would like to take one and pass it down. Yes. So we have a much more detailed financial report to show you, and which is also another good reason why Casey's here tonight with us. Okay, so we'll just kind of walk through this, and then obviously you guys can take time to read the details if you'd like. But you'll see that we added a lot more detail rather than just kind of give you the main drivers of the overage. We kind of broke it out into a few different buckets. The first one is one that you'll be familiar with because we've been reporting out on this. The special education tuition is what is the biggest noticeable change from last month. This is due to a single outplacement that occurred this month. Some other smaller changes in special education transportation for the existing population, but that's essentially where you get your month-to-month change for that. In the next bucket, what we've kind of entitled unexpected expenses. These are things that we don't generally budget for, are kind of, we called them anomalies, I think, a little bit last year, but also you'll recognize the McKinney-Vento transportation for students that qualify there. So that is totaling an overage of $315,000. Going to the next page, the next area that we've highlighted are some bigger areas in the budget that are over, and these are areas where we generally have a little bit more discretion in terms of how we budget. But most of the overage that you do see here is related to special education. And what is the biggest driver here is the professional services. So those are largely attributed to special education as well. So those are pretty significant in terms of overages. But if you go to the next section down below, you'll see where we are seeing savings in our budget as well. Salary savings, we're seeing a significant health insurance anticipated savings. This is just based on a largely teacher turnover and the census that we have currently employed. Related to that is disability insurance as well. Surprisingly, a little bit with VOAG and magnet tuition, that's a smaller number, but it's just due to the students that had actually enrolled this year. And then some other miscellaneous smaller savings in other accounts. So if you really look at sort of that section, that would have normally covered the section above that, which would have been, the general transportation, legal services, professional services. So we're still looking at the main things being special education, I don't know why I can't say that word tonight, but special education being the main reason for our overage, although it is significantly more than we reported last month. So there's a summary of that last section, but if you'd like to kind of take some time to go through it a little bit, and then we can answer any questions that you might have.
The net savings from the budget freeze, the 167 is a pretty big number already, so I'm just wondering what things are these things that are being withheld, are they actual savings, or where are those numbers?
So those, you want me to go?
No, yeah, go ahead.
So those are actual from a freeze, right?
Okay.
From, there's two different categories, the other anticipated savings, and actually, there is one correction on this. That net savings from budget freeze should really be 150, and that 17,000 should be moved to anticipated savings. I had labeled the savings in our fuel transportation cost mistakenly as a freeze rather than savings, but it'll be corrected for tomorrow night meeting, Rosa, and
The
it'll be
finance
in the,
committee.
exactly, and it'll be in the board packet as corrected. But it's the same total amount, right? And so the budget freeze is actually, the accounts that we're freezing actually totals even more than that 150. It totals 189,974.
Okay.
But they're very specific accounts. They're basically by location and object type. So it's ORG, which is, it's that, for the high school, the middle school, CLES, TSO, special ed. And then the object, which is, instructional supplies, textbooks, office supplies, transportation, things like that. So the accounts that I froze are very, very specific. And those were shared out with the, administration and department heads. And I didn't even freeze the entire account. I froze a portion based on, last year, speaking with the administrators, what do you really think you're gonna need to spend all of this on instructional supplies, or can we pull any back? So it was a very collaborative effort. I shared it all out with them first, and there was 2 tweaks that you can see in the reports that I do have that detail the budget freeze accounts. I did pull 2 items back based on feedback from the principals and the building administrators. But they generally are things like office supplies, supplies other, charges for services and repairs, so that's services and repairs on things like athletic equipment, or equipment that we have generally at the high school where we have like a culinary room and things like that. Furniture and fixtures, books and periodicals, so a lot of just our discretionary accounts. And again, I didn't take everything, I just took a portion that would not hurt as much, and still folks can get what they need to get for this school year. And then that other account, that other anticipated savings, are just natural savings from, our actual spend to date and what I'm projecting out to be for the rest of the year. And in this report, there is a link here, and it'll be part of the Board of Ed packet, will be the schedule that lists all the accounts that were frozen. And then that is informing the list of budget transfers that I'm gonna recommend tomorrow night at the finance subcommittee, so that we can actually, take this money and start backfilling these shortage areas, so that that money is locked in those accounts. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
My question is, last page, net shortage 574,927.
Yep.
In our contingency, we have 455,34. How are we bridging that number? That's $120,000 that is above and beyond what we put out there for you. How are we bridging that? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to talk about that, because I've frozen what I can right now. I can go back to principals and department heads and see what else they can get away with. We are doing things like putting restrictions on, the number of copies that can be made in buildings. We didn't cut
That's
off.
$7,000. That's.
Well,
That was for the color,
Seven,
but we
six,
can
and four.
further.
Well, it would have been, if color copying continues to go the way it did in the last quarter, it would be more like a $30,000 to $35,000 shortage, so we are trying to manage that. So we're trying to manage areas that we can without saying, you, stop teaching kids, right? Yeah, we have to talk about that. We do have to submit another refined number for excess cost grant revenue. We do have this new outplacement that I do believe the admin for special ed department is gonna verify for me this week, but I do believe that student will be able to qualify for the excess cost grant revenue, so we should get some return on that, so we may see some more money in excess cost grant revenue coming back. Those refined numbers are due March 1st to the state, so I'll have a much better number there. And by March is usually when we get that first payment from the state from the excess cost grant. And so we'll have a much better idea of what that reimbursement rate will be. We know we are anticipating that it's going to be much less than the 70% essentially that we've been getting in the past, as I think Rosa reported out last month. We're expecting it to be about 59%. So that was a big hit on that special ed side.
So you're gonna go reverse though again, because this number, and maybe I'm wrong, on page 1, line 4, your excess cost grant, that was higher. Every month this goes down.
Yep.
So we're losing our positive, so we're gonna turn negative. So this 30,000, we're gonna go 120 plus in the hole.
Come again?
The excess cost grant
Yep.
revenue,
Yep.
Brian, what was the history on that in the past few months? Wasn't that like,
Well, December it was 109.
Yep.
And then January it was 30.
Yep.
And then just now it's 30. It hasn't.
So December
it's
was
not
when
gonna-
we were at the 70%.
Okay.
We expected the reimbursement
Yeah.
for our excess
so
costs.
this number's not changing the rest of the year?
No,
The
it
30.
very well could. We haven't gotten our first payment yet. So the state gives you estimates. Until all of the numbers are in and they divvy up the pool of money to all the districts, that's when we'll know. And even when we get that first payment, that first payment that the state gives us in March will be based on the numbers that were submitted in December. Those numbers will not include this new outplacement of $119,000, which we do believe will be able to be included in the March certified numbers. So typically, the first payment that we get in March is about 75% of the total amount that we'll get. And barring nothing else changing in the certified numbers that we send to the state, it would be about 75%. Because we will be able to add this additional outplacement, I think we'll probably get a little bit more in that final payment that we get in May. Again, this is all, these are estimates, and they can change too. Now, the good news is if anything does change, we have the numbers that we submit in December, we submit them again in March, and then final numbers actually in September for the close of the year. And so that's when everything really gets trued up.
So how does this fund work? Because I'd like to hear your understanding of this fund.
It was
so-
very complicated.
Well,
Yeah.
not really in what I found out. It's complicated.
Yeah,
But in the end, the state has $45 million.
Yep.
That doesn't change. They're
Yep.
not gonna change it to 48 million. They're not gonna change it to 49 million.
correct.
So they could come back to us on this next one and say, we only have 40% that we can give you on this because there's no more money at the 45 million. The
Yep.
bucket's gone.
Yep. So they gave us that 59% estimate based on all the numbers because there's deadlines for these submissions. So
Correct.
every district has to submit.
I talked to
December
Mr.
1st.
Chambers, so I get it. I
Yep.
spoke to the state myself,
Okay.
so I understand a little of this.
So, okay, so for anybody else that doesn't know the details, they have to submit initial numbers in December 1st, all districts. So the state gets all these numbers in, understands what the total ask as of December 1st is for all the states, and they say, we have this much money, like you said, $45 million. Based on these numbers, this town will get this percent, this percent, this percent. But if now if everybody resubmits numbers March 1st, and they've all gone up $500,000, that shrinks the pool that each town is gonna get. So it
Right.
really is gonna change based on how many swings there are from all these three different points of reporting.
And we have no control over that.
No,
So
not,
I think that kind of is like.
No, but it's anticipated money coming in.
What's
That's
the
the
data that gets
anticipated.
used
We have no
actually
control.
dispersed?
Yeah, but we wouldn't know for sure, right?
They set a specific amount of money for the whole year, right?
For everybody.
For everybody, the entire state. They're supposed to pay a certain percentage, but then if that doesn't cover it, they say, oh, you're on your own.
But it's,
No,
it's gotta be something about like Brookfield versus
It's rated,
Bridgeport,
it's
right?
rated,
Yes.
it's highly rated.
Yeah.
The cities, municipalities, and when we get to our income levels and our standing in the town, we get less percent. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I would count on getting very little before I counted on getting
Yeah.
anticipated,
Yeah.
even anticipated.
Yeah.
So,
Who's
Yeah.
speaking to him?
Yeah.
He gave me, what do you want me to do? I don't have any more money when I talked to him. There is no more money. I don't know what you want me to do.
we get another payment based on March in June, and usually that's done, but if there's a big issue, they can take money out next year, and they take it against our excess cost, our education cost sharing.
What they say
payment.
they're gonna give us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This picture ain't getting rosier.
No,
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So that's how,
And there's still 5 months left to go in the school year.
again, we gotta bridge 120,000 at
Yeah.
a minimum.
Yep.
How we bridging that? That's, I mean, because we had to cover on the town side just as much stuff as well.
but I think like the big picture that we need to kind of like continuously return to is if you look at how we're going to bridge that gap, you know, we've bridged what we can control within our budget. We've already done that. What is essentially, you know, creating this this significant overage is more and more things that are becoming out of our control. If we didn't have McKinney-Vento, that pocket this year, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So, but that's something that was completely unanticipated, and we have to fund it. So,
And is that,
The electricity, that was
the
also-
electricity, exactly, you guys are in the same boat with that. So I mean, there's a lot of really big swings that we couldn't have anticipated. And nor should we necessarily budget for it next year either.
I
It's
was just
just,
about to ask, did you budget for the McKinney-Vento for next year?
no.
To assume that that same outlier that same situation might happen?
We did not. So these are situations that are sort of recertified every year. Once it's another process, right? That's governed sort of by the state. But there's a whole process to certify whether or not a student will qualify for McKinney-Vento
Got it.
needs. And once the child, unless the child's situation changes, right, and they are no longer in that situation, if they're in the same situation that they were when they were certified to be qualified, it will continue for the duration of the school year. We do anticipate that we may be able to, there may be changes, it'll be a whole year by then, a lot can change in a year. We are hopeful that, you know, these folks will be in more solid ground by then. This is a very, very high number, I will say. Historically, McKinney-Vento needs haven't been more than, you know, I think the highest I saw in the last 5 years was like $16,000. So this is a very high number. There were several families that have been impacted by this.
How many families? Can you tell us how many families? Or no?
I don't know.
If you're
Yeah,
not
I think it's
comfortable.
better, less is more. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
You know, why don't we rent some apartments?
But but this could happen next year. 'cause
It can
It
happen.
can always
doesn't-
happen.
But
it's not
historically,
happening
it's
here.
not happening, so you
Yeah.
know, the probabilities,
I know,
again.
there's so many
Historically, it
historic
hasn't
things that
happened to
are
this
currently
extent.
happening.
You know, I
We
mean,
don't have control.
We lost
Right.
12
when it
houses
happens
in
at,
one
when
fire.
it happens at smaller numbers, we
Yeah,
generally
12
just absorb
houses
that
in
within
one.
our
Yeah, that's
budget,
a
that's
good
just part of our normal
Right.
budget
Never
processes.
Yeah,
But
no, you're right.
when it happens at this level, that's when it becomes sort of unmanageable.
Right, yeah, and it just seems like there's so many
But-
unmanageable things that are just.
I mean, if you
Exactly.
looked at it,
all
between the
once.
McKinney-Vento and the electricity, right?
That's
Yeah,
300.
We
that's
still have a
$300,000.
big hunk of our contingency left.
Exactly.
Right.
And those are two things no one can predict.
No one.
I'm in
But-
agreement, and I'll agree. However, the problem lies, we're 120,000 in the hole right now. Everything's going in the wrong direction. And we got a budget process that this is gonna blow us out of the water to the point that we're gonna be over 4%. We're not gonna pass a budget. We gotta fix this. We're getting letters now from the people every day now, it seems like, over budget misspends and budget. And I know, you know, there's reasons, and I understand that, but the pressure is gonna be hard on us. And we gotta figure this out. We gotta get it together. We gotta have you guys on your end get it together, even at your board level, because we just gotta get it together.
You can have a new board, but these problems will not go away.
They're not gonna go away, but we can
Exactly.
find solutions if we all work together, and it's not seeming to go that way, and we gotta figure this out, because we're facing 120 here, but we can't absorb 400,000 next year, because we got a lot of pressures, liabilities. You got 4 possible outplacements, that's $600,000. You have almost $1 million in liabilities with health insurance that aren't in your budget right now. You have 2% that's not in your budget
Yeah,
Yep,
of a liability.
yep.
So we could pass the town at 4% and say, oh, we're gonna have to take $1 million out of our general fund to cover this balance. We gotta figure this all out. And the same thing, we gotta figure out this 120. I get it's unexpected, but we gotta come up with a solution as a group. And we all gotta work together, because
We do.
we're gonna be in big trouble in that budget next year. I'm gonna tell you now. It isn't gonna go.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The last time it was for this new, the new additional outplacement that's on this thing was not in the original 4. That wasn't just one that
Right.
popped up out of, okay,
Last
so it
week,
wasn't
yeah.
one that definitely converted, okay, got it.
And
That
that,
is-
no,
that is-
thank you. And that added to my liabilities too, because
I just knew
generally,
that there were 4 and I didn't know
we've
if there was
had
one
around
before.
$300,000 that we juggled amongst us as a group, right? I mean, so now you know maybe possible 4, we could have another so now we're in the $1.2 million range.
yes.
Of
Yeah.
possible.
So-
Now, I have another question here, so we
No,
have,
hold on, I didn't understand that. So last time they said there may be, there's
There
4.
was a potential of 4.
And this is
then-
one of those 4?
No.
No, it isn't,
So
it's
there's still-
additional.
There's still 4.
So there's still 4, that's
Are
what
there
I
still
was,
4?
that's
So-
why.
Oh, you're talking about potential for next year?
yeah, yeah.
It is one of those.
Oh.
Oh,
It is
all
one
right.
of those,
Thank you.
however,
We're all fixed.
we are
No,
absolutely
we're still,
not.
but they still have the unknowns.
But
Yeah.
I
They
just,
can't predict the
I was
unknowns.
just, because we were
Yeah.
told
That
about
is
4,
correct.
I was like, is this an
Even though we
additional
know
or
we're
one
free,
up?
and as Rose always said, another
It could
family
be
can move in, or
7.
2
Exactly.
families can
September, it
move
could be
in.
7.
That's
and
what
we-
I'm just trying to figure out, if it's an
So,
emergency or a.
I don't wanna spend time,
No,
because I
we're
know
not
we
gonna.
have like a tri-board, so I don't wanna
Yeah.
spend too much time talking about next year, but one of the things that I want you guys to immediately start mulling over is the thought of perhaps budgeting differently for special education. I mean, we need to start looking at the cases that, you know, our professionals at least understand might have a really good chance of being outplaced or incurring some significant expenses. Because right now we are simply not funding them. We're not funding them at all. And we know that they will at least have a pretty good chance of going against our budget. And so we are continuously starting every single school year in the hole because what we knew was going to happen happens. And so, you know, we don't have to get into that tonight, but it might just be food for thought because I will be discussing that with the finance committee
Well-
tomorrow.
I actually had a question on the professional services.
Well, it's still on the special ed, so I just want to close on, but on this year,
Yes.
are there, I know someone can come out of the blue, but for those that we're aware are potentials, how many potential could still impact this year's spending?
So our Director of Special Education is actually coming to the Finance Subcommittee tomorrow to talk about sort of like what is the road look from here to June. I think he will share that there is potentially one case that is really percolating at this point in time, and in the next 5 months, it's possible that that student could be outplaced.
And how many are outplaced at the moment, in this outlook?
33,
33?
for various reasons.
So then, when I look at this, we have the additional special ed tuition on top of it, you know, what we had planned for. What's the significance then, what is the professional services that we're paying, the 169, driving any of this down, or are we just driving up?
So a lot of those professional services, as I note in the narrative here, is related to special education. We had vacancies in our ABA paraprofessionals through December, essentially. And these positions were for some very high needs, specialized in-district classrooms. And students in those classrooms are required by law under their IEP to have a paraeducator with them. We could not fill these positions, and so we had to use an outside service in order to bring, qualified folks in to fill those needs. That is what drove a lot of those professional services fees going over budget. Additionally, there is homebound instruction again, these are for students, they are not outplaced, but they're not in our schools. But we are required to educate them, and so instead of, you know, an outplacement at this time, they are receiving homebound instruction, and that can be, a lot of times, homebound instruction is also in one of our extended duty lines, because some of our teachers will actually go to the student's home and provide instruction that way. And then there are a couple, I think 2 other cases perhaps, where services are provided from a third party, you know, resource that they receive homebound instruction from.
So back to that though,
Yep.
because I must have read 50 school district budgets this year. And a lot of them are all in the same boat.
Yeah.
But a lot of them have the proactive, how to reduce the special ed, what they're bringing in-house, what they're doing. And then I went into the Ed Insight website, did a lot of data research. And in our DIRC, out of 21 districts in our DIRC, we're in the top 3 on house placement. Greenwich and Glastonbury are the only 2 ahead of us. Now, when I read all these schools, they're all good thing, and they have initiatives on how to bring this in, and interventions and things like that. But we're number 3 in our DIRC in spending. And the same thing of looking at things, and we're talking about looking at the cost. The transportation costs, we're the smallest town in the DIRC, and we're number 6 in spending in the DIRC. So these are the things I think we're driving at. You brought up the special ed. We gotta do something, we gotta figure it out. But other towns are doing much better than us in this, in the financial point of view. And I sort of laughed that Farmington put out this Farmington Schools excellent in fiscal management expenditure ratings. 121 districts in instruction, 137 in general administration, 110 in central, 132 in student transportation, 134 in outside purchase services. So when I say we all got to get together, this is where we got to get to.
Yeah.
Farmington.
Each of those towns, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have this memorized, but they do spend significantly more per student across the district. So.
I have the data right here, so I mean, that's not true.
What's their per pupil spending?
Okay, I'll tell you.
This is great, if we can do the comparison.
Total
yeah,
spent
see
to
if we can
student,
learn
Farmington
something.
is below us. We are 13 out of 21. We're no longer the bottom. That was always the argument, that Brookfield didn't fund their students. We're no longer the bottom. We've moved up. Simsbury is below us. Farmington is below us. Cheshire is below us. Trumbull is below us. Orange is below us. So there are schools doing this. So I'm not saying, you know, it's an easy road, but other towns are doing this. And then if I go to school rankings, these schools all rank ahead of us. So they aren't biting. I mean, Glastonbury's 6th in the state, according to Niche. Greenwich is 7, Madison is 8, Farmington is 9, Avon is 10, Fairfield's 11, Cheshire's 12, Monroe's 14, West Hartford's 16, Simsbury's 17, Trumbull 18, South Windsor's 20, Newtown 24, Guilford 30, Granby 31, District 15 37. We're 39. So it's saying we got to figure this out, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so and in terms of, you know, the funding and the financial management of the special education needs, that's why Mr. Rowland is coming to the finance subcommittee tomorrow night, is to sort of, you know, talk about a little bit of that, because while I am reporting to you what these costs are, I have very, very little to do
Right.
with the services that we
Correct.
bring in and stuff like that. So I can't speak to the details of why our per pupil expenditure for
here's my
special
issue.
education is
So
what
let's
it
go
is.
back to my issue.
Yeah.
Because I do all this research, I look at this, and then you guys say, we don't get into the short, you know, the Swedes and everything else. We let John run the school district, and I'm saying, well, what point does someone take accountability and say, we're gonna get on this? We are gonna drive these down. We are gonna figure, I liked your idea, we gotta do something different, Rose, I'm not belittling. But other towns are doing this. Who's taking accountability to drive these numbers? Who is gonna be the one? Is the Board of Ed gonna say to John, John, you'll drive these numbers down. You make decent money, you're one of the top superintendents in the state paid. You're gonna drive these costs down. We're not gonna belittle our services. You're saying you're only reporting on the services. Everybody sort of shies away from the problem is how we solve the problem.
Well, so are you talking specifically about special education
I'll
costs?
do all numbers, but special education was at the top of the list now. Why are we 3rd in our DIRC?
I don't even think Bill is gonna have an answer for that. I mean, I don't think with students in special education being as individualized as they are,
Mhm.
and their needs being so unique and varied, I don't think that there is a straight answer as to why one town
But
would
it can't be unique.
better.
Brookfield can't be unique to 21 other towns to the point of,
Well, when you're
really
only talking
unique.
about 30 students, actually it might be, because that is a very small population of students. So when you have a lot of variability within an already small population, you could have enormous swings. So I feel like it might not be a fair assessment to compare one town to another when, who knows, next year it might flip-flop and, because it all depends on the exact students that are in that
Are
population.
you thinking they're bigger towns and they have more students?
I mean, it could be. It could be that being closer to Hartford, there's more services that are right there, 20 minutes away, and it's not an hour bus ride down county. I mean, there's just a lot of like little things that make huge impacts when you're talking like dollars like
I
that.
mean, I think that's actually fair that you can't compare them, but a year ago in the budget discussion, we said this number's growing faster than anything else in the budget.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do different?
Yeah.
And it's a year later, and I've seen no work being done at that point. Not saying it hasn't, I haven't seen anything, I don't think anybody on the board has. So one of the biggest problems that we have from a growth in the budget perspective, I personally, as far as I know, say nothing is being done on it. That's not acceptable.
Well,
And
that's
I don't care, I mean, you made the point of who should, that's not our decision, but someone should be coming up with some ideas to look at.
well, that is it's categorically not true, and it's fine because
I
the
didn't-
Board of
when I
Finance
said
is
can't
not.
be, because I said
I
I
know,
haven't
it's
seen
fine.
anything, that is not, where
Right.
have I seen that?
Well, at the Board of Education meetings over
I
the
didn't go
past
to
year, yeah, well,
Okay.
that's where these
Well,
conversations
just don't say
happen,
I'm
so.
categorically untrue, and I said I haven't
So,
seen anything.
right,
That's a fact,
right.
I said.
In terms of the budget, no, obviously, we're coming back here
I'm
with
on
bigger
actions.
and bigger
I'm not-
costs.
I'm on actions.
But we do have actions. Now, those conversations take place at the Board of Ed. But with our new special education director, we have spent a lot of resources on special education, trying to, we're bringing it, we had an IEP compliance position that was added. What are some of the other, I know we have like new positions and we have a special education strategic plan that was put into place. Parents, right, we were putting out like a lot of parental sort of fires at one point a year and a half ago. And those have largely been quieted by the leadership that we have that has taken the district into, taking the district in a new direction. So the actions are absolutely there. So I don't think it's fair to say that with all the attention that we have
Two
put
things. First, I
into.
didn't say it, so you shouldn't say it for a second. I'm not saying about the quality, because I have no clue on the quality. I assume you guys are doing everything on the quality. I'm on the cost.
Well,
And everything
yeah.
says the cost continue, and it's this, and everything implies the cost is getting worse. The cost is getting worse. Maybe it's more students, blah, blah. But I just don't see, I have not seen any actions on what we could be doing to
But I
contain
think
the
that's the
cost.
discussion with Bill possibly tomorrow, to
Yes.
see, are we
Yeah.
seeing a
Okay,
bunch
So
of-
when we're having a
No.
budget discussion, which I don't know when
You're
it'll
right, no.
be, we should have that discussion.
Here's some of the things though that's been speak to me, and I'm not saying they're true, so and it's not from Board of Ed members or anything else, is, are we, because of the way we budget the special ed and give carte blanche pretty much on the special ed, are we enabling this process not to happen? Because people are telling me that, gee, when you open up the checkbook as far as you do, Glenn, that it's so easy to say, well, outplace a student instead of figuring out a way to keep them in-house. And this is
Listen.
this is what's being talked about, so I'm throwing it on the table. I don't make this
Well,
up, I take
I-
phone calls.
Agreed, but I want to make it very clear that nobody wants our students. We're a board of education and it's full of a district with leaders who truly care about kids, who have made it their career. Nobody wants students outplaced if we can avoid it. That is the absolute last measure, unless they come in with an IEP or there's like a unanimous or unilateral decision. But there is no professional in this district that wants students to be outplaced because it is easier. It is not, and in fact, we're freezing things from our budget from regular education in order to pay for some of these. So it doesn't make sense if that was a motive. But I can definitely say that that is, we wouldn't be coming here every single month saying, you know, we have another outplacement and this is, you know, bad news for the budget. You know, if that's something that we want to keep kids in district. And it's also not true that necessarily the numbers are going up, you know, like they fluctuate a little bit, but we've been pretty steady with our numbers of outplacements. And over the course of the last, I would say like 5 years, the number of kids that are qualifying for and receiving special education has actually gone down a little bit. So we are doing the cost is going up,
Yeah.
but the actual numbers of kids is not really changing.
But I'm not suggesting that the solution is less outplacement. I don't know what the solution, but we need some creative thinking on it that I haven't seen. That's all I'm saying.
There's a lot of things that I think touch this issue, and part of it is, you know, just the crazy inflation that we've seen. Additionally, like just shortages in these special areas. The number of professionals that are needed to service these students is very small, and so they are charging more and more and more because they can get it. So, I mean, this is the facts that unfortunately we have to deal with. But
I'll just echo what you said, Rosa, and so I'm in the district, right? I work with these folks every day, and I can see how decisions are made, and Rosa is 100% correct in saying that the decisions that are made for students are made for students. They're not made for any open checkbook that anybody has ever heard anybody say that Glenn Rooney or the Board of Finance has. That's never, ever, ever a consideration. And frankly, and I know it's not from you, Glenn, but whoever is spreading that is, you know, it's.
But that's why we're talking about it.
It's-
So
yeah.
I gotta stop this. If it's not true, it's gotta stop.
It
Right?
absolutely is
So
not true.
I'm trying to
And
get it out
it
there.
is
This wasn't a
insulting,
persecution.
right.
This was
No, yeah, I
to
know.
get this information out so we can squash some of this, because there's so much noise right now that we're gonna have a tough 3 weeks or 4 weeks ahead of us, that we gotta get rid of some of the noise. But see, this is what, and I've listened to what you're saying, but like Fairfield put in their budget, serving our students in-house, how we got in cost avoidance of greater than 16 million. So other towns are really taking this, because it's the same problem in every town. You're not alone. I mean, and Rosa, I heard you. The number that I threw out that I once said, it could be again that we have more but that's per student outplay. So that's not less students versus more students. Not what I play in my head. It's per student. We spend 163 and we're the third highest. So
But is
you're
that
right.
including-
Distance-wise,
Is that including transportation?
I think yes, I do.
Is
So
that-
it might be
that's-
right.
But then what about volume? What about volume? If you have 500
Volume will make a difference
kids-
on a per student outplaced, because if you have 30 students outplaced, then it's X dollars, or if you have 27, it's X dollars, if you have 10, it's X dollars.
But
But
unless
you
you have
need
6
two
students.
teachers that will take care of, let's say, I
It
don't
could be.
know
No,
this.
Naheed, I'll accept that. I get you, what you're saying, yes.
Additionally, with the transportation, if you're a larger district and you've got, 6 students going to one outplaced school, that cost share is a lot lower than the one student that we're sharing with Newtown and,
Does
yeah.
the healthy start time throw off the transportation costs, because we're starting at a different time than maybe a shared, so.
like for the outplacements, you mean?
Yes, for the outplacement, you brought up a great point, like if it was a bigger, and 6 students were going to one spot, does it have anything to do with, because our times are a little different than maybe some of those other students, we're making extra trips to, or no?
Yeah, that doesn't have,
Okay.
that's a
That's
great
it.
question, but it doesn't have anything to do with our start times
Got it.
in district, because these schools all have their own individual start times that
I just
anybody who
wasn't sure
attends.
if, somebody's
yeah.
making a special trip, because
Exactly.
different start time.
Yeah, no, that's
You
a
know.
good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm done with my question.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn, I have to tell you, on Thursday, when I did my financial report, and the anticipated net budget shortage was $454,000, I was excited to come report that, because I'm like, we're right there, we're getting there. And then on Friday, I was, I learned of this additional outplacement, and I felt like I was starting right back at square one. So, we are back at square one, but we will continue to work at it. That's all I can tell you at this point. It was, while it wasn't fun getting this budget freeze, identifying these accounts for this budget freeze, I can certainly go back and look and see where we can try to pull back some more. And then hope things, I know hope is not a strategy, I know. But in terms of what.
No, I wasn't
he's-
shaking my head at hope.
No. I-
Don't take it wrong.
I mean, you always gotta go out on hope. Hope is a good thing to have.
I wasn't
But,
shaking my head at hope.
you know, some of the stuff is just really very volatile and out of our hands, unfortunately. Now, and that's for this year. And then next year, and Rose and I were already talking, we'll probably talk more tomorrow night. I do think what would be helpful moving forward is, you know, having these conversations about anticipated potential, you know,
They have to be had.
outplacements.
Don't
Absolutely.
think, this has to be a part, because we
Yeah.
can't
Yep.
carry $1.2 million liability.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And when, you know, the thinking is we can have that conversation with you now, today, at this point in time, and say, we are looking at, if it falls the way we are looking right now, come September 1st, we will need an additional $650,000 for special education, transportation, and tuition. And at least you have that number to have a solid number to hold in that contingency or whatnot, because I don't think you would want us to include that in our budget, because if they don't come to fruition, then
No,
you
but
know
we
what I
need
mean? But
we
to have
need-
that communication up front.
I think, and Rosa, you held true, and I will give you kudos. We have always said, what's in is in, and you held your ground, and I respect that. But I also think somewhere we gotta be, if it's 90% or 85%, we gotta be aware of this, especially if it's carrying $500,600,000.
Yep.
Because, and Marcia and I have talked about this, we've lost our pockets of money that we've been able to manipulate, and we've lost that extra revenues and ARPA monies
Yep.
and bond premiums of $2 million that gave us tools in the toolbox to work and patch these holes and patch the town and still build our general fund up. We're running out of those buckets now. So, and Steve made a point the other day, we've pushed these budgets down so far that some of these hills are gonna pop up on us.
Yeah.
I think, in really researching this, and I've done a lot of research in the past 4 weeks, I think we gotta get line items more correct to make sure that the line items make sense and they're all in the buckets. We gotta identify the line items that do go over, that we have been missing, and Marcia, we talked about that a little bit, what items we've gone over, and manage those, and maybe we gotta put more money in them. But we gotta figure out as a group is, we're only gonna get 4% from our taxpayers. I mean, that's a reality.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
when I-
21 years of budgeting, we've had one go over 4%, so that's a historical number.
I want to make sure I understand. When you say we should get our line items correct, what do you mean by that? Like, what
Just
can I do?
make
What
sure
is that?
they're all in the right buckets, make sure there's nothing that's not in a bucket that seems odd, that's all. I mean, I don't know what it is, but you know, make sure that it's all in the bucket so we can follow the bucket. You know, like where's the McKinney thing, where is that listed in your budget?
Oh, okay.
Is that in a special ed bucket?
Nope, that's in
So
pupil,
it's in-
that's in pupil transportation.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, but it's just for us to understand it and make sure that we know where these things are. Maybe it's already there, so I will apologize, but I
That's
mean,
okay.
we need to make sure it's tight so we can
Yeah.
And
really scrutinize.
I don't know, we don't have control on a lot of things, but the professional services, to me, I think, maybe there's some strategy, maybe there's some planning that we can do in advance with the anticipated numbers and say, hey, we need to hire X amount of people, that's going, I don't know, I'm just putting this out there as a thought to say that maybe that could be controlled. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you
But
said
see-
it's hard to find people to hire, that's why you ended up contracting out with other services.
The
Right, so
process that
maybe
we
some
run is to wait
planning,
until it
some-
happens means that we're always gonna be behind the curve and we're gonna be going after professional services. If we leaned into professional services, or leaned into staffing a little bit, you wouldn't spend as much here because in case a surprise happens, it's something to think about.
I mean, we've also talked about it in the finance committee, subcommittee meetings with I mean, if we're not competitive, you know, is that part of the problem, that we're not able to attract?
I don't
Or is
think,
it a
I don't
That is something that we look at, though.
we look at that. I don't think we are uncompetitive
Okay.
in that particular union. I do not think
Because
so.
I know that was an issue
Yeah.
for substitutes for a while.
Yeah. No, I think we're right in line with other districts in our area for sure.
I think
And we
Glenn,
offer
the
great.
research that you did,
You're all off.
first of all, very impressive. Thank
No,
you
no,
for
stop,
putting
stop.
that,
That is
no,
part-
that's,
that is part of the problem.
we need that kind of intense research. But I would love to go into that and say, okay, what are the other towns doing, and learn from them and see maybe there's something that they're doing that might give us an idea and give us, you know,
Yeah.
a footprint for,
I mean, as an aside, it's not really an aside, but in speaking to other districts, if, the legislative breakfast, I think, might be coming up soon, where there's a lot of people from this area, boards of ed that go, every single time, this is the number one issue that people are almost screaming about. So we are
Great.
not the
You're
only
not
ones
alone. I told you, I read a
that
lot of
are
budgets,
having
you're not
these
alone.
issues. So they're saying, what are you doing? I'm saying, what are you doing? Because nobody has answers. It's, you feel like a real, like you're kind of at a loss because, you know, obviously, like, our number one priority is the students, and we feel like, you know, we're underfunding special education, it's cutting into regular education, and that's just never a good feeling to have when you're trying to be better all around. So, I mean, I just wanted to sort of make it clear, like, the budget freeze that we have implemented, we always start with things that are, you know, least impactful to students. But, you know, I think we should keep the dialogue going when we come back and report next month, whether that's at the tri-board or whether that's, you know, here again. And maybe we can, if we need to get clearer on, you know, a particular number that we need to reach, and then those decisions, when we have that clarity as a board, can be made. And if they need to be tougher, then, you know, I understand that's the position that we're in, but understand that right now we're not touching students directly with staff and things like that, but that is where we're looking if by the end of the year we're in this or worse predicament.
I don't wanna go to that one.
None of us do.
And we do have 5 months left of the year, right? So the salary savings, you know, we could see some positive movement in that, if we've got, you know, staff on leave or vacancies opening up and things like that. So there's always areas that are still going to move with 5 months left in the school year. And there's certainly, like, there's a lot of context that I provided in here, and I know you guys just got it tonight, so once you have a moment to read it, if you have any questions, certainly please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to explain anything in further
Before you
detail.
go, Marcia, what do we have that we can use to cover this 120?
We have 455,000 of contingency when we return the other money. I think we may have a little bit left in electricity after we cover their costs and ours. I don't know yet because we'll talk about it later with the fire department. I don't have up-to-date data. But I think we'll have a little bit more there. We do have
Interest income is up, right? Above the
interest
budget.
income is up. I think interest income will be up higher than I thought when I did the report January 31st. The feds didn't drop the rate. What I'm reading now, trying to read to get ready for the budget, is that they don't expect any change in the rates until probably the June meeting. So that should help us. It's still an additional appropriation but that's what I'm thinking.
All right, so, and we'll all go around the board. We're gonna talk to everybody, and Steve, you included, so. My opinion is we don't freeze any more stuff. We
It's
take-
just keeping stuff down the road.
we take it on, we fix the thing. But we really gotta do something with the budget. We gotta tighten that down for next year's budget. We gotta come up with a plan. We gotta come up with some way to cost save. Whether it's the Healthy Start, $165,000 or something. And I'm just using that as the only number I know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not saying that's the
Oh, for
target.
the buses, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not using it as a target. I'm not saying that.
You're just throwing out.
I'm throwing out
As
something
an
that I know the
example,
number,
yeah.
because I only know that one number. I'm not privy to other numbers. But we gotta figure this out. We gotta be able to take some burden off of the budget next year so we can put more contingency in for these liabilities. We gotta cut something with meat, you know, like, but not hurt the students. Like this year, I don't wanna, me personally, we're gonna talk about this again. Me personally, I don't wanna go deeper than this 119, because when I was shaking my head, it wasn't about the hope.
Oh, yeah.
It was about a reality. It was about, you cut out as much as we can cut out without getting too far, and we've always had the agreement, we don't go too far, right? Eileen and I have always had that between the two of us, that we don't go too far. But we gotta figure out somewhere, we gotta get creative in next year's budget, beyond where we're at right now. We gotta figure out something, because we have a lot of things that are gonna jump up at us. The McKinney thing we have no control over. And we shouldn't have, we should pay for that. I mean, this is a reality. I mean, so I do think that we don't go any deeper on the freezes. Nahid, we'll start with you.
And I'm gonna disagree.
Go ahead. You're allowed to disagree. That's why we're having this
All right,
conversation.
so, if you all did not do the freeze, we would be here today talking about $287,000 in deficit. So I appreciate the $167,000. I think when we have unexpected things come our way, we gotta tighten some places. That's how I look at budgeting, and my thing is that, it should not impact the students, but there are things that we can do in the background, small things, and I would say continue to do those, because we don't know what the next 5 months are going to bring.
Perfect. Brian, you're the next in the line.
Yeah, last month when you were here, I kind of said I thought we would need to take out, I think I said roughly around $200,000. I think you basically did that, right? So I appreciate what you've done. I think we could probably squeak by this year. I mean, obviously, you're gonna try to improve, right? We need you to do that, we expect you to do that. So I wouldn't suggest that we do any more breezy type stuff, other than, just the button down stuff you're gonna do. I absolutely think we're gonna have to tweak how we run the budget this year. I think the way we've run it in the past has to be tweaked, because we just can't have, we're gonna squeeze by this year is my view. But the more you hear about next year, we won't squeeze by, so we're gonna have to be prepared for something worse. I don't know what the answer is, but I'll talk to you that.
Brianna?
It's kind of a combination of what they both said. I know it sounds weird, but
No.
Cut more and don't cut more.
well, I don't think we should freeze more and have it affect students. That's not answering anybody's issues. Having when the kids are getting affected, that's not helping anybody. Parents are getting upset, and then it's just creating a negative environment, and that's not what we want. But, like Brian said, obviously, all these things we're trying aren't working, so we've got to come up with a better solution to make it work. The McKinney-Vento and other things that are out of our control, we can't do. It just those things happen. Those things. That's life. There's nothing you can do about that. But we definitely have to figure this out. It's a lot, and then the other fear with Glenn is we've never passed a budget over 4%. So, and then like Steve said, we've been cutting it so close for so long, these things are now popping up, and we've got nothing to grab from to fix it.
Yeah, well, that's
So-
the reason we instituted contingency in the first
Right.
place, because we knew there were gonna be overages in some line item.
Right, but
This
now
year,
it's,
we're getting hit with a bunch of
Yeah,
things
and-
that are taking that out
yeah,
in a heartbeat.
and it's the 59%, and then it's this thing, and then
Yeah.
it's that thing, and then it's another thing. It's just, so.
And to comment to that, in years past, we've had everything go in a positive direction.
Correct.
For
Yeah,
the
we
most
haven't
part.
For the
had
most
this
part.
If we got
amount.
dealt 10 cards, 7 of them were positive, 3 were
Correct.
negative. This year, we're getting an 8 negative and only 2 positives.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a
Nothing
different
has
deck
gone
of
our
cards, which is putting pressure on. Eileen, your chance?
I don't know that I have anything else to add. I mean, I think I'm with Glenn on not freezing more. I mean, I think, we don't want to impact the other students. I mean, I think you guys are in control and understand what the needs are and everything, but, even sports equipment and, I know that you would draw the line on where it's a safety issue, but
Oh,
it's,
of
a lot of
course.
those things are just kicking the can down the road. So it doesn't always help us in the long run. So I think just keeping track of, as we do and having discussions, how can we do this differently for the next budget cycle?
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna freeze anything else either at this point, because it is gonna start impacting the actual students, that's what we're here for, is them. And the budget's already been very lean, so beyond this, where would you go for money? And budgets have been lean, and like you said, things happen, and now we're like, 8, 8 kinda bad,
Yeah.
2 kinda good, so we're having that kind of year, but you can't predict what it's gonna be
No.
necessarily. But maybe we can start to think of ways like be more creative. And I don't know if Governor Lamont's, talking about maybe giving more money to schools, which could help bring more things back in-house for special ed, but that's a year or 2 or 3 down the road, if that even passes.
And I agree, like you said, you can continue to look for things that don't affect, education and students and
Yeah,
learning
the
and
color
that.
copies.
I agree with you
the-
100%.
Yeah.
Always going back and looking again, you might find something you didn't know existed.
Are there other grants we can go after? Are there grants? I mean, now we have the one cost grant, which is big, even though we don't know what it's gonna be, but you know, the park side goes after grants all the time. Are there any things
Oh
over
yeah,
on
we
this side?
we go after quite a
We,
few
yeah,
grants.
our largest grants are the IDEA grant, the title grants. We have a Perkins grant, and those, a lot of those grants are for, they have to supplement, not supplant our budget. So
Right.
it's not as if we can take something out of our operating budget and instead fund it through a grant. That's like, the majority of grants work that way. Has to be in addition to what we're already doing.
Right.
Except for, you know, the IDA grants, which is, you know, funding para-educator salaries and things like that. So wherever there are grants to add some of, you know, color to what we can do for students, of course, we go after those. And I just want to say, I appreciate, you know, hearing all this feedback, you know, and not wanting to freeze anymore and things like that. And I really respect that and appreciate that. I also want you guys to know too, though, that, you know, if we have more changes and things, we get another bad card, right? Like we will make decisions that we feel are necessary in order to not, you know, expound this issue any worse. And if we did have to freeze anything in addition to what we've already done, I want it to be very, very clear for the public and everybody listening that that is not the directive of the Board of Finance, that the Board of Finance isn't telling us to do that, and that's what we have to manage, you know, internally on the Board of Ed side. So I just want that to be super clear, but I do appreciate your sensitivity to the impacts that has on the district. So thank you for that.
Marcia?
Can I just ask one other question?
Go ahead.
And this might be too soon to ask, but do we anticipate further repercussions from all the stuff that's happening on the federal level right now? Because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very
well.
Some of those
If
grants
so
are
far,
federal, what happens if they blow up the Department
I
of
mean,
Ed?
I-
IDEA grant is
so
something that.
It's my understanding that IDEA is not gonna be touched, Title I and Title II won't be touched, and those are the bulk of our grants. And like I just said, a lot of these other grants are, they are intended to supplement, not supplant. So they would just be things that we either wouldn't do, but wouldn't really impact the main, you know, things that we do,
The core
and
mission.
things like that, exactly,
Oh,
so.
look at that.
That's
Right.
what's at risk.
Marcia, your comments to add to this table discussion?
I think the charge should be that Steve and Casey and Dr. Burrell and I get together and we come up with a plan of how we cover this. So we can have, you know, this is what we would need possibly as an additional appropriation. I think we need to bring that to the meetings in April, your meeting and the selectmen's meeting, because it's gonna be high enough that it's gonna have a town meeting. We have to do it soon enough that, that it's not just in name only, that if it doesn't pass, that, there's gonna have to be some drastic steps and we have to leave them time to make those.
Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, this is the first year, I think, where we've eaten up our contingency in the November, December time period, right? We just did. Luckily, this year, our interest income is up. We estimated it as very, very moderately. We predicted that the Fed would lower their rates 1 to 1.5%. They did not do that. Powell made a comment, the chairman of the Fed made a comment 2 days ago, that he didn't think rates were going to change at all from the Fed past the June meeting. We have an increased interest income in our budget because of that. We're making an educated guess there. But we're getting to the point where we can't continually hit these huge numbers. 1.2 million you've got in variance, right? Wow. And Governor Lamont, I was at the cost meeting last week. He got up there and the first thing he said is, we're gonna cover excess costs. We're gonna take care of it. I don't have a lot of faith in that because it had never been done. I think they should. Their standard for the state, their desire, their goal, and I believe the law is that they're supposed to cover this. But they're not. They're just putting a certain amount out there and you'll get, if there's $45 million in claims and $20 million in the project, okay, you're gonna get 37%. No, that's backwards. Backwards is, here's the number. $110 million of special ed across the state. Here's the funding, $110 million across the state. It is killing every school district, and it's engendering these conversations that are painful, and I know they're more painful for other towns than they are for us, right? And, there's no set answer except to continue to communicate, continue to work together, continue to make sure that we know what these numbers are, right? I think this year will be okay, but God almighty, this happened. We are, to Glenn's point, over the years, our budgets are pretty darn tight, and that's why we're seeing this. And we have the contingency, but the goal for the contingency was always to add it to the general fund, so we at least maintain our percentage of general fund, right? If you don't add to the general fund, the percentage you have as a total compared to total expenses goes down, which the rating agencies really hate. So it's difficult. I think this board and the Board of Ed, we need to continue to communicate very, very clearly. And I think it's incredibly helpful that you guys come to us from the very beginning and say, okay, listen, September, we got 2 special eds. This is gonna cost us this amount, because it helps us plan, right? And I thank you for doing that.
So to summarize this, from what I got out of this, is you, Marcia, Steve, and Casey are gonna get together, figure out a plan. Listening to my team members, I think we ask you not to freeze anymore, but we're gonna put you on Nahid's honor system. We're gonna call it the Nahid honor system. To take her vision into place, where you just gotta figure it out where you can, and you gotta, I know you do, and Rosa, I know you push down
We're
on
already
things, I
doing
know.
that.
But a little extra from the Nahid plan here of figuring it out to help out. I'll be honest, this year bothers me, but next year scares me. That's the reality. That's why maybe I'm the way I am and sitting here, but I run numbers all the time in my head. It's a bad thing, I know. But I don't see the numbers coming out against the liabilities in a price range we can afford. And maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised when we all get the numbers, but the big number, I don't see the big numbers getting offset with the numbers that we can pull in on the revenue side. That's just my brain working, doing this 8 years now. So I think that's what we gotta work on. We gotta figure it out. And maybe in your plan, you can figure out something on next year's budget that above what you've done now. I mean, from a point of view, your 3.6 is not a big number for the ask. And Brian and I have talked about this, but because of the special ed 2%, now we're really at 5.6. We're up at a number that we gotta figure out something. And it's not anybody's doing, it's not anybody's misdoing, but it's an elephant in the room that we gotta figure out how to get around it. And it's gonna put us all in a situation that, and I've always looked at it as if we can get it near 4, or a little under 4, it remains in our hands, a little bit. The voters will get behind it. Once these start getting voted down, it snowballs into a bad situation that none of us want. So, looking for your help, I guess, is what I'm coming from. And if you come back, and the 4 of you come back with a plan on how to cover this 120, and you use the Nahid honor rule, I think we'll get through this year. Okay? Anybody else want to comment to that, or do say different than that, or? All right, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
To the board, I apologize, but I think that was healthy to go through a lot of that stuff now before we didn't, so. Well, then Marcia, you're here now, you wanna go? Or let Steve go and do it the regular order? All right, go ahead, Steve.
Just slice bread here. So
You
I
have the
won't,
least drive.
yeah, I won't take long. Along these lines, the state has changed the way that they are going to value motor vehicles. They are going to use MSRP minus a set schedule, 85, 80, 75 down for 20 years. The net result is every town in Connecticut, town and city in Connecticut, is going to see a 10 to 12% decrease in their revenue from motor vehicle taxes across the board. I've talked to 10 different first selectmen, they're all 10, 11%. That is about, for us right now, about $455,000. That's 1/2 of 1% of our total revenue. Now, you can say to residents,
It's a
well,
0.5% in our budget,
I'm sorry?
0.5% in our budget.
Yeah. Yeah. So, people are gonna save on their cars on average. Some people are going way up, some people will go way down. But the vast majority will see a break, a lowering of the motor vehicle taxes. And we can argue to anyone say, well, the tax increase this year is 4.5% that you're gonna vote on in the referendum. But 0.5% of that is really, we're just moving it from your motor vehicle over here. People don't understand it. They're just gonna look at 4.5 and say, you're taxing me more.
I agree with you.
Now, I personally, if I was state legislature, what I would have done, I agree with the MSRP rule. We have so many people coming in, I have a 3-year-old car, but I got 250,000 miles on it, and it's got 6 dents, and I had to put a different color fender on it, so it's not worth what you say it's worth. That all goes away. There's no question. This is what it is. But what they should have done is phased-in approach. Okay, look at all the towns, see it's gonna be a 10% decline? Okay, this year, it's MSRP, the amount plus 9%. Next year, plus 8%. Next year, plus 7%. So that you phase it in. The reason the state wants to do this is you can take a car that is valued at $1,000, right? That's the 70% go through the thing. $1,000 is tax on it. In Greenwich, you pay $11.12 for the tax on that car. In Waterbury, you pay $42 for the exact same car. That's an inequality that the state wanted to address. I understand that. But what they're doing is making our budgets incredibly hard to manage. They should have thought, in my opinion, should have thought it through a little bit more and done a phased-in approach, right? 1% of that 455, so that would be 45,000. Okay, we can absorb that. 455,000 ahead. So that's where we are on that right now. We did, at the Board of Selectmen, does everybody know what a community development block grant is, what we've been doing with those? So we get money from the state. They give us money, the town administers it. We have to hire a consultant to do it. It's incredibly complex what you have to do. But these funds are given to the town, and then we administer them. And then for people who need to get a new roof, or a new heating system, or something repaired, whatever it is, and they don't have the money to do it, and they're lower income, they have to have income requirements. We loan them the money. They can either pay it back as best they can, right? Or when they sell the property, we get the money back, right? That's the agreement. It's worked really well. The problem we've had over the last 4 or 5 years is we can't find anyone who qualifies who needs help. So we have about 190,000 in this community development block grant. So the state came out recently, like 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and said, hey, we have a program, a new program, that you can do housing. So we can go into Brooks Quarry, we can apply for up to a $2 million grant. So Brooks Quarry, we would go in there, upgrade the ADA bathrooms, upgrade the roofing, put a water line in, right, to that. Spend the $2 million upgrading Brooks Quarry, which really hasn't had any money spent on it in a long, long time, at no cost to the town. But here's the rub. Design, engineering, architectural services are not part of the grant. It's very typical for the state. But they did say we can use the 190,000 we have in this program, the Community Development Block Grant, to pay for those services. So there would be no cost to the town. The consultant, the man who would do this work, is paid for out of the grant. So this, if we can get it, it's a win-win for everyone. The people in Brooks Quarry, we can upgrade bathrooms to make them fully ADA compliant where they're needed. There are, I don't know if anybody has ever been in any apartments there.
How many units are there?
There's about 40 units, I believe. It's mostly senior, it's mostly people who are on, it's obviously income qualified. It would be a big, a win for everybody.
Can I
So-
just add, Steve,
Sure.
that this 190 that we have, this all came up through the state
Mhm.
because the state is looking at because of the age of that grant, they're looking to have that grant returned,
Right.
the 190.
So if we don't spend it, they're
Return
gonna
it
take
to
it
the
back.
state or use it for
Yeah.
grants quarries, you know,
Well,
to be our
the
choice.
2 million there, you know,
We don't know if we'll get it or not, but it's worth applying.
Applying.
It's worth doing it,
absolutely.
right, to apply. And the consultant does the application for free, no cost, so, we have to give them some information, but that's all we have to do, right? We did have presentations, I know you all were at the Board of Selectmen. The Community Center Committee reported to the Board of Selectmen, I think you saw that, they're moving ahead. They're asking for $20,000 to start the analysis of the building. They're looking to look for the asbestos, other chemicals, PCBs, PLEs, I forget the other things. In tonight's package, you're gonna be asked to transfer that 20,000. We have it reserved already, it's part of the project. My question there was, because we had this problem at 20 Station Road where we did all the testing, and then this year we had to go do more testing. I said, do we gonna have to do this twice now, and then we finally decide? No, as long as we don't change the building, don't do anything to it, the testing we do now will be good forever. So this testing will have to be done at some point, so you'll be asked to do that. The Police Ad Hoc Committee has had their first couple meetings, they're moving ahead. They've voted in Jay Purcell as the chairman for Pro Tem until they get a full committee. We have one new member added this month, so we had 6 out of the 7, so that's good, and they're gonna move ahead. Paul Checo from the NBC made a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. They believe they will still be under budget on Kennewood Lake Elementary School, and the question came up, when do we think we will be finished with this and we can close the project out? This has been for quite a while. They said to us, I think late summer, fall. So we're gonna try to hold their feet to the fire on that. They gave us a report, and we can send it to you if you'd like. I'd have to copy it. Of all the punch items, the list of things that they have to do. I would suggest, this board might want to invite them to come talk to you too, right?
What's happening with, I thought the 90-foot baseball field was part of that budget. I've heard otherwise.
The what is, I'm sorry.
The 90-foot baseball field that was going to.
Yeah, so on the baseball fields, the NBC controls $829,000 from the CLES project for the replacement of the fields that are being lost at Huckleberry School, now CLES. The budget was originally to put those fields on Erickson Farm, which abuts CLES to the south. There was considerable rancor about putting ball fields on that. People like to keep it open space. So after numerous going back and forth, the NBC is working with the athletic director of the schools, the Brookfield Baseball Softball Association, and the town. And their recommendation was, right now, we're going to take the portables down, that's part of the funding at Wisconsin. We're gonna leave the 260s where they are. We're applying for a steep grant for $790,000 to put lighting in at the high school. The NBC has agreed to put 20% of that as the town's contribution. The current capital plan agrees to put another 10%. So we will make an application for the steep grant with 30% town funding. For steep grants, you're not required to put any town match, but it is strongly favored. And the stronger you have a town match that's actually funded, that's available, that you can commit to, the stronger your application, the better the chance you have to get the grant. I think if we put up a 30% of it, they'll know that, and it's also the thing they like to see is phase projects. So we put the lighting in for the high school baseball field and the softball field. Then the next phase of that project would be to do the drainage, to make sure that that field drains properly. And the third would be to turf the baseball field. The advantage of that is the obvious advantages of turf field, but we could also put another field in the left outfield for soccer, lacrosse, flag football. We'd actually line the outfield with that, so we'd get a dual-use field. Because unfortunately, most of our fields, everybody can use them, except for baseball fields. baseball field, soccer from across camp, you know, got a big hump in the middle. So that seems to me, and they like phased approach projects. So we think we'll have a fair chance at that, and I think it's a reasonable thing. That would leave, we have spent $47,000 out of the $829,000 to take down the portables. The contracts have been signed, they're got the building permit, I signed off on that last week. And so maybe spring break they can take that down. If not, we do not want to disturb the schools, we do not want heavy equipment there once kids are there. If we have to, we'll do it as soon as school closes. And then the NBC will have about, 500,000? Yeah, no, 600,000 in funds still left to redo fields, to work on the fields. That include Wisconsin softball fields, the fields, I'm sorry, they're not softball fields. But we're asking Parks and Rec, and this gets a little more involved than I thought, but I've asked Parks and Rec to go to every league in town. What are your membership? Have they grown? Have they gone down? What kind of demands do you have? What fields are you using? They know what fields they're using. But really look at this so we can plan for the future, what fields we want and what we need to meet the needs of all the various clubs in town. I think that's a really good idea because we're probably not getting any more land. So we have to use the fields we have to their best advantage. So they're doing that, and Paul's thought, and I agree with it, and I think everyone else involved, baseball, high school, AD, baseball coach at high school, that looking at this as a whole is a better way to do it. So take the money, apply for the steep grant now, that will still leave a lot of money that the NBC can use to do other fields, backstops, dugouts, whatever. We do have a need for, we only have one 90-foot field now in town. 190. My opinion, this is my opinion, other people disagree, we need a second 90, we do. So that's where they are with that.
So let's run that back. The project is for how much? The steep grant we're applying for is for how much?
About 790,000.
790.
Right.
Of which you're taking, town money, you're gonna take 30% of that.
No, that would be
No.
20, and then we're
It's
only
still
doing
coming out.
10.
So
20%
20 is,
is-
it's still town money, I mean, regardless of
Yeah.
the bucket, it's not
Got
my
it.
money, Steve's
Understood.
money. So 20% of this is coming from the CLES school fund.
148, right.
148.
No, 100, about 150 because it's 740 for the lights and about 50 for the electric,
And 10% is coming from where?
the next year's
Capital
budget.
next year. It's in the capital budget.
Yeah.
So it's about a $500,000 steep grant application, not too much big kicking.
I mean, when we did the lights on the high school fields after the macro burst, that was about 450, wasn't it?
It was 470,000 for the lights at the football
That
field.
makes a big difference. I mean, that makes the field more usable. The
Well, this is
drainage-
2 fields too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's 5
And
years
it's been
later.
an ask for, it's been an ask for a long time to have
Yeah.
lights on those fields. Sorry, I interrupted you. Were
No, you
on
didn't. No,
tangents.
go ahead, you talk.
No,
You're
I
allowed.
mean, I like the idea of making the spaces that we have more usable. I
Yeah.
think that's a good investment.
Especially on a big 90-foot field, you're talking 13 and up in the ages,
Yeah,
so those kids could play at night.
yeah.
Right, the younger guys, do you really want your kid out there at 8:30 playing baseball? Probably not. But older students, right, 13 and up, so you could probably, at the high school, get 50-60% more usage of the field.
My philosophy though is different from this, and I looking at it as, it's already been agreed, so I don't say. The steep grant's for $1 million. We have 20%.
This year, you can apply
We could-
for up to $1 million.
Up for to $1 million. If we took a project that we already have reserves for, we could take the 20% of that, free the reserve up, and we'd have a couple $100,000 of free cash to throw into next year's budget to cover some of these costs. What we're doing is, we're taking money from places that we have savings from, but we have buckets of money into these reserves that we've built up. We have buckets for the field, we have a bucket for a fire truck, we have a bucket for an ambulance, we have a
Right.
bucket for a lot of things. So are we getting the biggest bang for our dollar utilizing this project, or is there other projects that will, like a gift that keeps giving?
There's one thing you didn't take into consideration. These funds were borrowed. And we specifically said the money has to go to fields. So the money that the NBC has control of in the CLES budget must be used for fields.
Yeah, we still need money for field, you're only gonna have 500,000,
We'll still have 500,000.
and what's that gonna get us though? That's gonna get us a 90, 500,000, we're still gonna pay 250,000 to get a 90, right? Cause I thought the numbers were 750 and above for a 90. So we're still gonna be short of the 90.
The first number we got is 10 million.
Yeah, but I mean
Right.
realistic number, what's a realistic number?
Yeah, you're probably right,
So
somewhere.
we're 250 in the hole with the 500, so the 500's getting us nowhere for a field that way.
I think you can do a 90-foot field if you had the land. You could do a 90-foot field
So-
without lights for 500,000.
If we had $1 million fire truck, just
Yep.
I'm using $1 million, and we have 400,000 in the reserve,
Mhm.
we take 200,000 out of that reserve, we use the 800,000 from the state, we get $1 million thing that goes away. That leaves us 200,000 plus this, whatever we have left for Paul's thing, we're now
Right.
talking $1 million that we can get all of our fields done.
You
We
won't
get a
all
bigger
the
bang
fields.
for the dollar,
You won't get all the fields covered.
we'll be a lot closer.
But here's the thinking on that. There is a need to look at the overall needs of our residents and we haven't done the full study as which teams are growing, which leagues are growing, which are getting smaller. What fields do we actually need, right?
So
We
then my idea
know,
makes more
everybody
sense.
agrees we want to put lights at the high
So
school.
let me jump
Oh,
in.
yeah.
I had this debate with Steve a week ago as part of the capital committee.
Right.
So I didn't use fire truck, but it's the exact same example. So my reading of the discussion we had is that what you're discussing is probably a better financial answer with just your finance classes on it, because that's where I came from.
Yes.
Steve's view when he talked to me was the needs for fields is a higher priority.
I won't disagree.
And this gets the fields done sooner. And we don't have a solution to this 90, we need a more 60, we just don't even have any clue. So we gotta figure out, but you're right, we're gonna need more, of course you get a steep grant for that. And the steep grant needs to go in about a week and a half, so if someone has a good idea, it's too late anyway.
But we're saving 6 months to spite our nose, and we're putting fields in without a game plan, and we're sort of, we have a semi-game plan.
We're just adding lights, but that's been a project for a while.
Okay.
Yeah,
I still have a difference of opinion.
I
but
look,
that's
I'm
all
not,
right.
For as long as I remember, I
That's
feel
all
like the
right.
lights are
I'm
on
good.
capital.
yeah.
I was trying to free up money.
We're
struggling
So was
with
I.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going with it 100%.
And I don't disagree with you, but to remember that we took 2 fields away. The
Yep.
agreement was we were gonna replace them.
But the lights ain't getting a field other than more field use. A couple more hours of
That's
field
all,
use.
that's,
And
if you
that-
get
it's
60% more use of it, that's
That's
like adding
actually-
60%
Not
of
to
the
mention,
new
halfway
field.
there,
Alright.
Because baseball's kind of spring and fall, and that's when you need the fields, and that's when it gets dark early.
Not to mention, there could be, and I'm just throwing it out there, revenue only in the fact that, because I used to play rec league softball in the summers, and if the fields had lights.
In the
people could
summer,
play
you'd
later.
be there at 9
So you-
o'clock.
Right, but if you have lights, you can get a
Yeah.
team, you can field a team, and they
Yeah.
can play, and they can pay.
Yeah.
I had to pay to play in the rec league,
Yeah.
but they pay you. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's revenue there, I'm just
No,
saying,
no,
there's
no,
an
you're right.
extended use.
If
And
it was a
I
month
think-
earlier, I'd be more strongly in your camp.
But I think in light of our conversation, just,
I
you
like how you're
know,
working that in light.
I do think that we have to think about the whole financial picture of the town, where we have these things that are out of control, which we cannot control, but then we can control when to put the fields in and when to
Right.
put the lights in, because even though they are a need, the priorities of needs, right? I don't know, I'm just thinking
I went to the
that-
same business school you went to. Control what you control, so you can manage the out of controls.
Yeah. So
I went to your
I
same
do-
school. I was in your class.
Yeah.
So the next part of, this is very complex, the next part is, we've got 2 open steep grants that aren't closed yet,
Right.
which means the odds of getting this one is kind of low,
What,
having a third.
what?
No,
Pickleball
no, we're
and
not,
volleyball.
not low.
We're
They,
waiting.
Lower.
they do not like you to have
Lower,
open steep
lower.
grants, but we can
Oh.
show to them that both of them
So
will
he's
be
making this argument. The fact we have
closed
two open
and
ones
finished by April
Isn't
15th.
great. The second is, this is a half
So I
million.
don't think it'll be a
If you
major.
get $1 million, if you go for $1 million, the odds of getting it are lower. So this has
Agreed.
a higher,
I could, yeah.
higher probability of actually winning this one than if you.
Which is important because that's money coming in, so that's
Right.
You're not
another.
paying.
It's just another thing you have to consider. What you said is, if you get it, is a better answer financially, though it's a little lower priority. I
And,
think
but
better priority.
also, there's $30 million in total, 169 towns. They create this 6-week window, I believe, on purpose, to literally cull out towns who can't jump on it, who can't put the project together, because they don't want to look at 169 different projects, right? So I think Brian has a good point. We do have 2 outstanding steep grants, and they do not like to have outstanding steep grants because they don't want to have to follow these things for 10 years. They want you to do the project, get it over with, spend the money, they refund it. The only thing we're waiting for here is because the winter got us. We're going to redo the bathrooms as part of the pickleball, right? We already hired the contractor. As soon as it gets warm, they're in there. The PCA's project will also be finished by April 15th. And we can, in our grant, state those categorically.
When does the grant have to be in by?
15th
Saturday.
Saturday.
That's, I argued what you're arguing as vehemently as you did, probably more a week ago, and I lost. So
I
that's
didn't really
why
argue vehemently, this is not vehemently for Glenn.
More than you're doing now.
No, but Brian's saying it was, Brian's just saying it was at a much higher level.
That is
And he
quite
lost.
the understatement.
I gave up.
So, we're pushed really hard
Can't
here,
react to it by
right?
saying
Can I ask a
And
random?
we'll see what they do. Anytime there's a grant, I want to apply for it.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah,
have
free
to,
money.
any money that
Is
comes
this
to
a,
us.
Glenn raises a very good point. Is this a perfect solution? No. If we had our ducks in a row better, if we had all this planning done way, way ahead of time, but let's face it, we could have done all this work last year.
We should give them this discount. By the way,
If
you
the
saw the
planning had
Board of
been done
Selectmen,
prior to
3
last
options
summer.
came in. This was a 4th that came out during the meeting. It's better than the 3 that came in.
No.
Can I ask a
The
random
$5
question?
million baseball.
Well, you've done the,
field.
you've done
$5
the,
million baseball.
It was capital.
Am I getting a owner's box up in the stands?
Could we fit a 90-foot field in the brush yard, in the dump, brush dump?
You could, you would get a lot of pushback.
No, I'm just,
If
I
you
mean,
go
is there
over to
another
the yard,
space?
it's full.
I
We
know,
use
is
that
there-
constantly year round.
Oh, I know, but is there another space?
It's really tough, you know.
Land across
People
the-
say,
the land
let's
across
put it
the
right
street."
here. Oh, we got the farmer's
Land
market.
across the street.
Let's put it right there. Oh, we have the expansion of police station possibly, right? Well, let's just take a soccer field. Oh, the soccer people will be really happy about that. We do believe we can get a smaller field at the high school to the right of the field as you're walking back towards the softball field. There's a practice field there that we could
Why
use
not
that.
center school?
I know.
Center school's a possibility, that there's not enough space there
Not a lot
right
of
now.
space in center
We're
school.
90 foot.
Not for 90-foot.
There's a lot of space around the building, but I don't think enough space for a 90.
All right, let's go on then. Let's move on. What's next, Steve? You were going through, we cut you off. What's next on your
Yeah,
thing?
that's true. You dragged me down the,
That softball field.
I will have, we had hoped to have your budget packages tonight for you. My budget is 99.99% finished. We just didn't get the books completely put together. We will get them put together tomorrow. I will be submitting my budget to you, the town clerk, and anyone, and the schools, I said earlier, the schools, tomorrow, right? Would you like to
And
know
then
what
it goes
the
to the Board of
increase is?
Selectmen. Yeah, go ahead.
3.84. Or 87. 84 or 87.
7 was this year, so unless
That's
it's
better.
exact same.
And that's
number.
including
That's-
11% on the
point.
insurance.
That's including putting 11% both on the school side and the town side increase in health insurance.
But you had to cut it on the pension side to get to that number.
We had to lower the ADEC to the required amount. Remember, we were keeping it up because we thought the markets were a little bit wonky and we didn't trust the markets. So we had to move money around.
So how are you gonna play it when the tariff hits and the market drops 30%?
You're
How
like
you
way
gonna-
ahead of the rest
How-
of us. Can
how
we
are
not
you
have this
gonna-
discussion
Oh, no,
now?
I'm already there.
All right,
So
well,
how
four
are we
of us
gonna, again, balance against that? Because
Yeah.
as a group, we decided against that years ago, that we're
Yeah.
not gonna mess, and we have more of a liability in that office right now on the market going wonkers than we've
Yeah.
ever had.
I would look at it that we are making calculated, we are overfunded on our pension.
By what?
Ugh, 1%, 1 point something percent, 101%.
No, we're a lot more than that, hold on.
Oh, is it? Maybe I got the number wrong. Remember, the ADEC is a future-looking amount,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even if the markets went down 20%, our ADEC would not go up by a factor of 5. It wouldn't, because you have many years to get there, right? We had a high ADEC driven by the fact we were underfunded for years, right? So last year the ADEC was 220,000, we put 900 in, I think.
No, last, it was correct, something like that.
Some, directionally, I'm pretty close on that. So it's just like we were talking about with the Board of Ed, we're making educated guesses. But Glenn, you have preached this for years. Anytime you run budgets over 4%, you run a huge risk of the voters not approving them. Right? And what's really hurting us, honestly, this year is if we didn't have the motor vehicle, right, this would be a 3.4% increase. And we tell people it's really a 3.4, but
which
they're
is
not.
going to be another big one for us. We really have to figure that out. I don't think we can continue year over year, right? So,
Yeah. Well,
I
let us
guess-
get to the books. You can
yes.
look at it,
No,
come
no,
up with
no,
your
I
questions,
agree.
come up with your
yep,
issues.
yep, yep.
The pension is 110% funded.
110% on it.
And what did you take out of that, just since, so I can think about that tonight?
What do we?
Underfunded, not underfunded, but
We
what did
didn't
we
under-
take from last year? What's the decrease from last year?
So it went down like 800,000. The ADAC, you mean? Yeah. Between both sides,
And we're utilizing that on both sides.
yes.
Because it's a town pension plan, so it's paid out of the town.
So you have 800,000 in a positive impact, but
Yep.
that could flop on us next year,
Could.
where we go down to 92% funded and we gotta make a move.
That would be a 20% drop in overall value of your fund. And remember, this is a long-term investment strategy in a pension fund. Really long-term, as long as you can go, forever, right now.
Something's gotta give.
So you have time to fund it, you have time to get yourself back up to 100%. Now, would we want to put more money in to get it back up to 100% quickly? Yeah, we would. It's a risk you take, but everything we're doing here has risks associated with it.
Personally, we're gonna go through this when we have budget discussions.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of my
Look,
report.
I'll make a motion, I need to, can we move on, because we're wasting a lot of people's time here, for two people, 3 people understand this, really, maybe you do too. I certainly don't, I don't think either of us, I don't, no, so we're wasting 4 people's time.
All right, fair enough, move on.
One other question for you, Steve. Do you have any feedback on how many responses on the Economic Development Commission survey have been responded?
I do not.
Okay.
All right, anything else, Steve?
No.
Marcia, please?
All right, revenue, we're looking at about 600,000, as of January 29th, we're looking about 600,000 over budget. That was calculated before the taxes closed for the January collection, so the next report will have a better projection of where we stand on that. We'll have a better projection of where we stand on some of the other revenues, because after January 31st, we start doing more specific projections. Any questions on revenue?
Are all the grants you just showed us, the federal grants, in revenue?
No, the federal grants, the Board of Ed has a separate,
No, change files, just-
that has a separate grant fund as required, that for their types of grants. The FEMA grant will, we've got a separate grant fund on the town side, so very few of them will be in the general fund.
Where's the
Essentially no
police?
federal grants in the general fund.
Where's the police $1 million again?
That would go through the grant fund. That it is, they've got some little grants, and we've got that one big one for
A
963.
police grant, or it's a general grant fund?
It is a grant fund, it's in the financial statements, it's a grant, which I just got out of there. It's a grant fund, it lists every single grant in there in your financial
Well,
statements.
thank you. That's all.
Kind of like we do with the capital non-recurring, that, in the capital
Yeah, we
project.
just never really look at it.
No, I think they gave it to you one quarter.
I'm
they-
sure you did. Okay. I know you did.
But,
Sorry.
correct. Any questions on, other questions on revenue? On expenditures, that, we don't ask for transfers this quarter, I don't know of anything that's not in good shape. I do, give the caveat that, we're working hard with, and as are they, the Brookfield Volunteer Fire Department, that we're trying to convert over to, our systems and our controls, where they, get purchase orders before they make the purchase, and where we do the accounting. The two biggest variables, payroll and revenue, we just have to get more frequently. I know that they're overtaxed because we have yet to get a budget from them, and it was due January 16th. And I know, and they talked about it, so we're working on trying to get some solutions to that. So I don't know where we stand on the fire department, but other than that, so far that we think we can cover things besides the Board of Ed, internally within the town side. And, any questions on any?
How much is the FEMA grant, and when will we know if we get it?
The FEMA grant is about 120,000. That I've got a worksheet on it here. That and that is more than what we have spent.
Actual expense.
That and I can show you why. That normal. That we had budgeted 160,000 for FEMA. That the direct costs that, you know, are cash going out against that 160 was 93,653. We're able to allocate payroll and fringe benefits to that, which went against the budget lines, and we didn't pull it out as they were working on it. So that's 27,000.
When
We
will
have
we
a
know?
quick,
When will we know? I'm trying to move things along, when will we know?
oh, so, he was closing the thing today, that is what he said, and the FEMA rep was closing it today. We hope to know sometime this summer. It takes a long time for FEMA. We're just now got approved to get our final check from the storm of January of 2021, but we accrue it when it gets obligated, and I would expect that sometime this summer, whether it's before June 30th or after, I don't know.
So that doesn't help us close the contingency yet, that's too bad, that's kind of like, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
So I wouldn't count on it for this year, by June 30th, but it could happen.
But you know what's odd about FEMA? We had a few individuals, homeowners, who washed out driveways, and we had two neighbors on Quarter Burn. One got paid 100% of their expenses by FEMA 14 days after they applied. The other neighbor got paid 10% of their cost. But they paid 15 days after the claim was put in. I was shocked when they told me
They're
that.
on top of the list.
So maybe we'll get lucky, maybe they'll just.
Yeah. As of now, he was, and I didn't get a call from him today, the FEMA rep was closing it and sending it to his superiors, which they all do something to it. But he hadn't denied any of our costs, so that was good. The bonded projects, we're not asking for any transfers, we don't know of any issues. And cash capital, that we are asking for one transfer, we don't know of any issues. We're asking for one transfer, that we've got reserve money for the community center. They'd like to take 20,000 of that for some survey to make sure that they're following what people's needs are or wants are. and for the testing.
Asbestos, PCBs.
And then we did round it up because they didn't, that if they've got a cost for, printing or something, that they didn't want to have to keep coming back and.
And we're gonna ask them to go,
delaying
we're
it.
going to bid for the testing agencies for that. It might be a little bit more, so we put a small amount in there that will allow them to move ahead.
So any questions on any of that? All right. The audit, and I just got a letter today that I'll share with you next month, that we were concerned, we had 3 years of fixed fees, that, and it only went up $1,000 a year, and the town portion absorbed that, and we have 2 years still on the contract that we didn't know what they were gonna go up, that it was too far in advance for them to fix a fee. I had put in my original budget that I thought 10,000 seemed probably what they might do. They went up 4,500. So we're excited about that, so we're going to bring that to you next month since it just came in.
Thank you.
Capital?
Yeah, let me show you 2 quick charts. So yesterday we had the final capital committee budget recommendation meeting. So I'll show you what we sent to Steve and to Glenn, on what we're recommending for this year. After this, we'll probably take a 3-week pause to let the budget cycle, let the heavy lifting that we do, and then we'll get right into the 10-year plan stuff. Kind of just barely started that. So.
Is this the one you want, the 10-year,
Not the 10-year, no, the one I sent to Steve this morning.
oh, this morning?
Get a copy? Yeah, I did, because I called you, I don't know, something other than your real name, remember?
I remember that.
Autocorrect got me. All right, so yeah, just if you want to make that, a lot of hard work. The team did a really good job. Just so you know, it was John Mescola, Les, and Stephanie from the Board of Ed. It was a pretty small team. So where we're coming in right now is bottom line 488. So 0.4% growth in total year to year. So I won't say this is austere, but we did not put, there's not a lot more to cut out of this if we decide we need a lot more. It's pretty thin. And you can see there's actually a lot more growth in finance, because a lot of what we're doing is the biggest chunk, you'll see it on the next page, is education, which is around $2 million, and it's almost all bond kind of stuff, roofs and the like. We did it in a way of what the logic would say it should be, right? So if it's a large dollar amount and long-term usage, we called it financed. We can still look at it and say we want to, put some things that are in financed into current, et cetera. But this is where the natural flow of how long the stuff's good for and how much it is. It's almost $2.9 million. We looked at how much is reasonable to come out of excess revenue. So that's a little over, I'm sure I'm kind of going bottoms up, a little over 400,000, which is down from almost $1 million last year. So reduced our dependency on excess revenue fairly significantly. And I think we're on the right path that could be 0 next year, and we can get away from that and start building bond funds, so that's good. And then from current, you can see it's 3,051, that's up 2.4% year to year. Paving, $1.5 million like it always is. Reserves is down a little bit, but we're still funding all the things we have reserves for. I gotta go back and look exactly why that's down. We'll talk about this more in more detail when we go line by line. And then all other is actually up significantly, partially because we took it out of excess revenue and put it into current. So the key numbers on this is the total that we're asking for is up a little less than 1%, 0.4%, and the amount that would be in current is 2.4% per year. So it's not bad. And then when you go to the next one, unless there's questions on that, I'll sorry about the font. Maybe you can make that bigger so people can read it. This is how it flows by area. So you can see general government's come down. And again, we're going to go through a lot of details. So let me just give you a quick snapshot. We're spending more on public safety. Public works is kind of flat year to year.
And culture and rec is kind of flat year to year. Education, which just fell off the chart, is basically following the 10-year plan. It's down a little bit year to year, but that's following the 10-year plan that we have. As a matter of fact, they added about $150,000 for servers for Wiskadir and for BHS for this servers for the security systems and all that. So that wasn't in the 10-year plan, but we still put that in. Anything that had like a safety or security kind of thing, we were very careful to try to fund all those. I don't think anything came out of this that was built on safety. I mean, maybe there's like a rusty truck we didn't fund. Someone get tetanus if they touched it. But other than that, we put in everything that's safety related. So that's just the snapshot. It's very similar to last year from an aggregate level. I think when the group see if this is what stays, Steve will look and say if you change anything. No one's gonna love it, but I think everybody's gonna get the key things that they needed funded for. Any top level questions? Again, I think the team will come in, we'll pick a day in the cycle and go through the line by line view of this. What was the original request was, it started as
14?
Yeah, 14, so a lot comes out in the process, as you know very well.
Very proud of you.
I channeled you a few of the things.
You eat that almost 60% shave.
I gave it, one of the.
You're splitting my name with me well.
That's right. We can't afford the extra A, so we have to.
Or the N, or the N.
Oh, that's right, the whole NA, I gotta get rid of. One or two things came in without, I was a little generous, one or two things came without quotes. And we gave them a little bit of money saying, oh, well, we don't trust the numbers right, but it's an important thing, so
you're
you better get a quote pretty quickly.
You're better than me.
I said, it might not survive the Board of Finance review, so you better get us a quote before it gets in.
Any questions for Brian?
This is great,
Thank you.
Can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
I looked at this, I've been talking to Brian, they did an incredibly good job in an incredibly
doubt.
short period of time.
Yes.
I really
I only
appreciate it.
pissed off one person, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, then,
Then you're doing your job.
Yes.
that, very good, thank you. All right, we're on to, old business, debt policy. I think we've all looked at it, we
Yeah.
hacked it. I don't think there's any more discussion on it. It's gone through the ringer.
I just found a grammatical error.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Was that from
I
last
was
month?
gonna sign this thing.
It was from 12/31.
Okay, so I found a grammatical ones too.
I got this one. Yeah, and I'm shooting it back to you because that
All
was the
right,
grammatical.
so we won't sign it tonight, but I think other than grammatical errors, we're all,
No, it was fine.
Ready to
I
vote
read
on
through
it,
the whole
so-
thing. I was good with it.
to go back, I'll just make a motion, we approve the debt policy tonight. Do I have a second? I think we've discussed this enough. It's gone through legal, it's gone through the Board of Selectmen.
It's going to our bond council.
It's going through
So
bond
many
council. I
times.
think there's enough due diligence. That doesn't mean it's not a fluid document to the public. We can make changes to this. This is a guideline and a policy.
We ran the capital committee kind of using these where applicable, and it seemed to make sense, so that's a
That's great.
proof point.
Perfect. So then, all in favor? Aye. Passes. Thank you. On that note, I think we do need to, after budget season, we've gotten through a lot, is we need to figure out exactly what policies need to come next. And I think Brian and Marcia were talking about one that we should pick up, and if you two want to take the lead on that and get it to the point where it can come to us, I mean, it would be appreciated if you had the time, and Brian, if you had the time to help out.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We might need to scope it just a little bit because it is a little nebulous to me. What we've been talking about, maybe you'll be more clear on it, but there's areas of spending.
Well, explain it at first, the topic of
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I mean,
very high level. There's areas in the town where we spend money, and it's not obvious to me that we have defined controls on how it gets spent. So, and I could be wrong on some of these, right, but we have reserves in a lot of places, and who has the authority to actually turn a reserve into an expenditure, right? There could be controls in others. One that confuses me is we have this whole capital process for us, but then there's a piece of capital in the Board of Ed budget that's capital spending, but it's not looked at the same level, and it's not kind of melded in with the town. So how does that all work? Any other areas of spending, are we comfortable that we have the right controls in place on the spending? So
That, again, that's a little amorphous, but I think that's the area that we need to tighten down some. And Marcia, you'll say it much more eloquently than me, I'm sure.
I think it came up last night with Parks and Rec and capital spending there and how does that fit into this purview and who gets to approve it? And Steve and I worked on a policy that Steve has sent to the attorney a year and a half ago. So I think that might cover some of it.
It's a good thing to look at, because I agree with you. Not that we would have any rogue board, right? For example, the Conservation Commission has control over the spending of the funding that is being given to the town by developers and from other sources. They're the ones who get to spend it on open space, right? Or improving the buildings that they have, right? It's not really, it's kind of capital, but it's not, it's funds that they have. We want a little bit of understanding there, right? Like, they had to approve hiring pro property management to manage those two properties. We're gonna need to do work on those buildings. One of them is in pretty bad shape. The Conservation Commission controls those funds. But I think it would, at worst, it would be good to have all these pots of money with an understanding of who does what to whom, when, and how, so nobody gets surprised.
Right, and we might decide that some of them, we want a secondary control or some other check and balance, because the way it's written, maybe it's a lot of money, we're not necessarily comfortable, so that's.
Yeah, the control right now is, I talked to the chair of in this case, the Conservation Committee, suggest things to him back and forth, but I think there should be some kind of review process, right? And we'll have to check our ordinances and the charter to see, because some of those are.
This might end up saying there needs to be an adjustment to the ordinance, who knows? So
It might, but it's a good idea to look at, it
Did
is.
that capture everything, or do you think I missed?
It is a good idea.
And I did try to change it when we had the Charter Commission, and they said they don't want it in the charter, they want it as a separate policy.
I think it's a good idea. I do.
I would much prefer it as a policy decision or ordinance, because charter is a nightmare
Yeah.
to change.
I don't think it needs to be chartered, but we'll see.
I don't think it
Doesn't
needs to be
need
chartered.
It's gotta be a
I think-
guideline to help us through like the infighting of who can do what. Everybody's trying to push in the right direction for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
It's a matter of everybody being on the same page and everybody understanding their roles and how to move it forward.
And everybody knowing.
And
Right,
yeah,
that's what I mean,
like,
understanding and knowing.
have
Just
Having
need to
in
know
one
it.
place, like an
Right.
organizational chart.
We're doing this, we're
There's
spending
no-
this money,
yeah,
we're
you
doing
just
that.
like
At the
you
end of the
said.
day,
And here's the
town-
road to go to spend that money.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
the road you need to drive on to get to the goal,
Right.
to the end line, right? I mean, that's all we're doing.
These are the people
This
you
is,
call.
and
these are the
it is
people you
just
do.
checks and balances along the way
Healthy.
to keep everybody, and they're all on the up and up, but it'll align the up and ups to the point of there's a great paper trail, there's a process in place, and I think that, and I spoke to Brian briefly on this, and Eileen and Mary and Brianna have been with us, we've gone through the macroburst, we've gone through the COVID, we've
So
gone
much
through
stuff.
so many things, we've never had the chance to turn proactive.
Right.
Yeah.
We've been reactive as a board for the most part. We've done some proactive,
We've done some,
But
we've
we've
done a
been-
fair bit.
we've done reactive,
Yeah,
and it's now time to go proactive.
I agree.
And then with the experience that we do have, you might not have the years of experience on the board in the next board. Because between me, Eileen, and Mary, and Brianna, we got a lot of years here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and our goal has always been to put policies and procedures and knowledge bases in place for future boards, regardless of who is on them,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, so I'm on board, if you
I
guys
love
can
that. I think it's a great idea.
spearhead that and work with Marcia and Steve, and then bring it to us in a format that we can talk around, that would be
That's how we
awesome.
did with this, right?
Yeah,
That's-
no, I
think that worked well.
I agree, that's why I don't wanna change
Yep.
the process. All right, perfect, that passed. New business transfers, you need me to make a motion, Marcia?
Yes.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the proposed transfers between projects in the capital non-reoccurring fund for the end of 2025 as shown on the attached report that we reviewed earlier and was passed by the BOS on the February 3rd meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any
The
discussion?
only discussion I'll say is, it's just small dollars, but a 30% kind of contingency is only $5,000, but whatever, it's like 30%. If any bigger number, that would be too much for $5,000.
Mhm.
So it wasn't a contingency for the costs of those things, it was for other little things that come up, so they don't have to, come back to us because they wanted to get these posters printed, or they won't have to, so it was miscellaneous more than contingency.
They still have to get our approval to spend all of that.
With purchase orders.
Purchase orders.
Okay. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Budget calendar, we talked about the dates, I think we
Yeah.
keep those
Is that still good
dates.
with everybody?
Yeah, one, because that first week in March, I'm out of the country. If there's any chance we could do those meetings like at 6 instead of 7, at least I could be.
Yes, for me, yes, but anybody else have a problem
Do when?
starting at
At
6?
6 PM instead of 7
I-
PM.
Leave work at 6,
So
so I'll be
it'd be
late to, I'll
six-
just
6:20.
be late to every meeting.
And I'll be early every night, if it goes beyond 7.
That's fine.
Did we send those dates
We'll
out?
have
Do
one
we have those
Friday.
dates?
No, we gotta send them out, that's the thing we gotta do.
You mind? I mean,
So,
how long is it?
Full disclosure,
You know
for Christmas, my kids gave me a ski vacation along with my wife
Oh, nice.
in Tahoe,
Nice.
starting on the 4th of March.
Yeah, no worries.
But I'll just, I can
Steve,
zoom
you're
in.
gonna have your pretty much done, and we don't make any decisions until later in the
Yeah.
process.
And here's the, we hope to have the Board of Selectmen budget to you a week early.
So,
I will have mine out tomorrow.
I feel like I.
Right, so I've
super
had
confused.
March 3,
Sorry.
4, 5, 6. So
3,
it was
4, 5, 6, yes.
five,
Monday,
six.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yep,
Then I had 10, 11, 12.
yep,
We had final deliberation for the 21st. We'll keep
Yep.
going, public hearing for April 1st, which is a Tuesday.
yep.
And we even had notated that for the March 3, 4, 5, 6, most of that Brian and Steve would be out of town.
But I
Did we
get it
say
from
that the
6, I do
5th,
an
we were
hour.
going to change the 5th? Did we say that? Because I think we
Yeah,
all.
there was something
There
there.
was something
text.
about a
Yeah,
fifth, I
about the
thought.
5th, yeah, because I
What was-
also have a conflict on the
Or
5th,
was that
so.
last 5th?
Yeah, that
Was
was
that
for
was
the
February
tri-board
5th?
meeting.
That
No,
was
no,
March.
that was.
That's fine, we're
That's
gonna
fine.
run them,
Oh,
and
it
don't worry
was?
about it,
Okay,
because these
okay.
are departments, Naheed, so
Yeah,
it'll be a
it's
couple
okay.
It's okay,
departments,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
overall.
I can come and I can leave early too.
Yeah.
No, don't get stressed on this,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's okay.
the majority of, so basically, it's just departments coming in those days. I think that,
The 3 to the.
I'm
the
gonna push
3,
for the
4, 5,
Board of
6.
Ed to come on the Monday, the 3rd.
That's a good idea.
Get them up early, get them, I know Marcia usually give us a general overview on our first night, but let's get the Board of Ed here on the 3rd so we understand. So that gives us a couple days to think about Board of Ed, and if we have any ups, downs, or side differences with them, they have time to react, that we can bring them back another day.
Yeah,
So-
all of that, and then, so it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10, 11, 12, and then nothing the entire final week, and then we just deliberate on the 21st?
Yes, and to streamline it, what we'll do is, and I'll state about this, as we go through the discussion to the department, those members are here, we'll go through quickly the minuscule line items.
Yeah.
So in other words, if it's $250 for supplies, we'll make sure we look at it, check the box. So when everybody gets together, we're talking about maybe 20 main line items.
All right, so I
Right.
might have a problem on the 21st, but that's it.
That's fine, we'll know your view anyway by then. You voice your views, so we'll know where we
Yeah.
stand.
It could be fine, but it could not be.
I'm just saying, I think we'll go through, like, I know we're all gonna be, and it's gonna come down to 20 line items that we're gonna talk about, maybe even less
Most
than 20.
departments are not changing,
That's what I'm saying.
they're going up 2.7.
Well, the big
2.8.
discussion's gonna be what we were touching on with the Board of Ed people here,
Yes.
is that what do we do with all of these risks, whatever you wanna call them, and how do we
Correct.
manage it? That's gonna be a good discussion.
That's gonna be the whole key.
That's
To
gonna be all on the
me,
21st.
with the experience of the budget and working with Steve, we ain't hitting supplies in any department. I mean, it comes in at 1,200, 400, 700, you know, spent 680 last year, we're asking for 700 this year. It's gonna come down to a few line items. It's gonna come down to
Oh,
fully
it does.
understanding the health insurance. It's gonna come down to understanding the electricity, which is all the math has been done, but let's review the math. Heating oil is another one, but it's gallons versus usage, just understand the projections. In other words, what have you projected, we understand that. The math is done, we just look at it.
It's
And then it comes down
investments.
to the positive impacts and the negative impacts, and what liabilities we wanna carry in a 3 point, whatever Steve said, 4, or whatever your percentage was budget. Do we wanna carry liabilities, or do we wanna cut to keep it the same number? And so we can handle the liabilities, or how we wanna do it. So it becomes a philosophy more than a numbers, I
Right.
think.
But we might wanna, if we can, we might wanna carve some time like on the 12th to get everybody's philosophy on the table, so that we come into the 21st, we already have a thought of what the philosophies are.
Yeah, we can
Right.
carve on the 11th and the 12th, and we can squeeze in departments, I think, because
We used to do that.
the departments, again, they're gonna talk about a few main
It's
drivers.
not, the departments
Yeah.
go quick.
Yeah, you want the main departments in, Parks and Rec, Public Works.
And anybody who
Police
wants to
Department.
come, though.
And
If you
anybody
have a
wants to come.
department that raises their hand and says, I'd like to go
Right.
before the Board of Finance, have them come in.
I'm
You-
gonna put a
you-
thought out
You're not
there.
gonna get a lot of makeup on that one.
This $167,000 that we saved by doing, right? I think every department has room for that. And I know that they're smaller numbers, but it adds up and it does become bigger. So this time, because we are aware of all of these things, I don't know, maybe we should,
We're gonna go through them.
yeah, look.
That's what I'm
through
saying, we're gonna go
That's
through them
it.
as a
Yeah,
group.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying gloss them over.
No, no.
So we're gonna, as a department presents, that night, we can go through the line items very briefly, because there's only like probably 6 line items per department. We can go through them quick, even while the presentation, we can go through it and ask our questions, and you can say, gee, you know, I'm looking at this, there's maybe a 5, and I agree, the smaller numbers add up, but I think to streamline it, there's a lot of numbers that aren't gonna, or you're not even gonna question, there's just no room to
And that might be
question.
your philosophy, is, hey, look, you know, if we give everybody a little haircut, that everyone's got a little bit of room, so we should give everyone a little haircut. That's one philosophy on how to do it, that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
but then you could do it as a group, you could say everybody shaves off 0.5%.
But that's, we can discuss on 11th and 12th, if we
Right.
think we need to get a little bit out,
Agreed.
that's one way to do it.
And Naheed, remember that the capital book will have the supporting, it's not just the lines. You're gonna
Right.
get pages from every
Everything.
single department
Yeah.
telling you what they're
Seal,
spending
seal.
their money on.
Yeah.
And
And
I
they've
suggest you
already been
look at
told to
those,
keep it
because
tight
those can
the first
sometimes
pass.
engender questions,
Can
because you
do
don't
the
quite
capital
understand
on
what
the
they're
10th, so I
saying.
can
Right.
read
So when you
it.
get that book,
Yes.
It's going to be, okay.
Right, so the first week, we wanna do 6 PM?
If we can, if you don't mind, yeah. I just have to leave by 7. I'm sure I can stay till 7, let me put it that way. Maybe I can stay later, but
6 PMs.
I can,
I mean, I think, can you
guarantee
make
6
it?
to 7.
And then from then on, go back to 7 PMs? The 10th, 11th, 12th, 21st, and all
Yeah,
these 7?
that's fine.
I'll just be a
and
little
were you gonna
hangry.
block out the 5th?
I'll bring
Maybe
you
we can
food.
get food, like we used to get pizza for the.
I
We
remember
can-
we used to get
And then
We
the
do have a
pandemic
budget
hit.
for it.
So,
I'll pay out of pocket so people don't have to
so
deal
the
with
third,
me
we're
being
gonna do,
hangry.
what do we have to submit now to? Who's
It's
gonna
not
submit to Andrea? Who did that last
Usually
year?
you said you
did
Well,
that.
once I knew, I think you did.
Yeah, I
And then,
know.
yeah, once I knew, and then I played off of that, the agendas.
So, Steve, can you, this week, so we can, we're gonna approve these days,
Right,
right? So we'll make, I guess we can make a motion to approve these days.
and then we can
Correct.
fill in what departments
And
come which nights.
You want the Board of
So-
Selectmen on the 3rd, and you want us to schedule the other departments?
Board
No, we
Ed
want the
on-
Board of Ed on
on
the 3rd.
Board of
Yeah,
Ed.
that's, I'm sorry,
We said
Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
so the Board of Ed on the.
Yeah, on the 3rd, and then we'll
Yeah.
move in other departments. So this is how, and you can correct me. I'll make a motion that we're gonna meet on the 3rd for the Board of Ed.
Mhm.
The 4th, the 5th, and the 6th to open to departments,
Mhm.
starting at 6 PM. The 10th is capital and other departments, but capital will be in there with other departments. The 11th is deliberation, the 12th is deliberation, and the 21st is final deliberation.
Mhm.
That works.
Okay, works.
Everybody good with that? Again, we can add, if we have to, we can change an agenda item like a day before, so if we wanna
We always did that.
do
yeah.
something,
If
we
someone's
can
come
make it.
back or.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, do I have a
Then we-
second?
I
Go ahead.
second.
We also meet on the 26th of February for capital?
I guess not. We can, but I don't.
I don't think we need
No,
to.
we don't
I don't think we
need
You
need
just,
to.
you just
I
have to
I
do
have
it by
my
that
notes,
date,
so-
to get the 45-day.
Yeah, we're gonna
Before
do
the
the capital on
referendum.
the 10th, we can approve the capital
You
on
can
the
approve the
10th.
capital
On the 10th.
on the 10th, and then you're good.
Yeah. Because at this point, until we see any adjustments you may make,
Yeah, but you'll see him tomorrow.
okay, then we'll know, yeah.
So the
And I
10th,
don't
we
think-
we
I
can
don't think
review
the Board
it,
of
go
Selectmen's
over
gonna-
it, and make a vote on the 10th
I
for
think we-
capital.
yeah,
We've
we
always
can do
done
one.
that, I think, early,
Yeah.
right? We've always approved that. So, yeah, the 10th, we could do that. So, everybody in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll write it up and give it to Andrea. All right. Internal Service Fund, we gotta talk about that, how we gonna manage that?
So we've talked a little bit about it, we don't wanna start behind. I do think we wanna have it because when we don't have a final number, if we put in 11% in this budget, if we put in 13% in this budget, And then they come in and, because we know they estimate high, because they never want to be caught like they were a few years ago, telling us one number and then coming in higher. But it'll commit both the town and the Board of Ed to that percent, that's what we're paying. And it will not, so if we budget and for 11% and it comes in at 9%, it doesn't allow us 2% to move around to other places. So it also allows us to all talk together and requires us to all talk together beforehand. But we can look at that in more detail on a different night.
So now, every year, we seem to get the information prior to us deliberating in March. So every year we put in a plug number, and then generally when we sit down and talk to the Board of or the Board of Ed, we're already making the adjustment because we've gotten the final number. Do we anticipate March this year as well, or not?
Last year we got it in March, but they tell us that sometimes it's been all the way to May. Because there was one year that it was higher than what they had expected, and it was already after we had had the public hearing, and then you were stuck, and you said, what do we do?
Yes, you're right.
So they try to get it earlier, but they don't commit that they're gonna get it earlier. And they need it for the state budget. The state budget's out, I don't know what the governor's doing, but,
Right.
So, we'll have to figure out how we vote on this and all that. I mean, I think the idea is good for the internal service fund. I'm not a big fan of the methodology to determine it. So if we're only like a month or two behind, and I'm not sure this is the right way either, but you could say, hey, look, like this year, we're going to agree to 11%. And if it comes in something other than that, then it doesn't matter, we're still gonna bill at 11, and that's internal service fund. But taking like a 3-year average kind of thing is as close to a random number as you can get. I think that's less information than if you just, what we have when you're making the decision. I'd rather use the best information. So I don't know the answer, but I just didn't like the
But it's
methodology.
been really
Yeah.
tough because this number has been all over the place.
But you have in
We do
the
have some
before we go to the
historical.
town, we have a pretty good feel for what the number
yeah,
is.
but the problem is the Board of Ed, that they have to have their budget done by November 30th.
Okay.
And we don't even have the first meeting with the state by that time, by the time they have to have theirs. So we need to have something for them to put in, and they don't have to, come in and say, hey, what should we all use together? There's no rules for that. So that's where it happens, is that they need a number in the fall.
Yeah, I don't see that a problem, because then when it comes to you or us, if they say, hey, look, we have 5%, and we know the number is 7 or 2, we change their budget on them by that amount of money.
Yeah, but the problem is when the final number comes in at 11 and we budgeted for 7.
Happened to us 2 years ago.
Yeah, but if we
Before it
budget
is
for
locked
7
in.
now, that's what I'm saying, if in March we budget for 7, that's what I'm saying, I'm okay locking in 7 at that point.
Mhm.
And then if you get surprised, that's what you use the internal service fund, but I wouldn't
Exactly.
use a 3-year floating average, it comes out at 2 and it ends up being 11, it's just, I think,
Yeah, well,
That's using-
we've tried all sorts of things about how to predict this, and we just, there's no way to predict it when it's gone anywhere from 1% to 12%.
okay, but my point is, if you take what you thought it was gonna be in whatever, March 21st, and what it actually came in at, it's gonna be a lot tighter than if you said
Yeah.
the 3-year average. So, I'm just saying, I think I'd like a process that uses the closest approximation, which is the number that you're gonna know in March.
Yeah, but my only concern with that, and we certainly, it has not happened with the Board of Ed, but it could. That they've been responsible, but what if they said, you know what, we're gonna use 2%, and now we're all scrambling later, that, to me, I think that they should use a percent. I don't want any games played with this, that, I guess that's what it is, and they haven't, but it doesn't say that some
So-
other administration.
I had some notes about that. That was like one of my concerns. I wrote like random notes when I was reading it, which was, someone who is not as responsible could carry a balance and decide not to manage it. And when it says here, as long as adjustments are made over a reasonable period of time, define reasonable, And that was the concern also, that we're making a decision about something that would start with the potential, new first selectman and an entire new board of finance. And then what happens if we have a surplus and another, the Board of Ed doesn't have a surplus? Who's getting, it just, I love it all. These were just my random notes that I made when I was reading through the whole thing to ask you.
And on the surplus, I had that same concern, and so that's why we would divide the surplus between the entities, that,
All of your concerns are what this document's trying to address. We just
Right.
gotta get there.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I
I
agree.
think,
That's
the
a-
concept, everyone's kind of
agree,
agreeing,
100%.
but it's the details we're
Yeah.
gonna have to work through. It's not
Yeah.
like we're gonna work through, it's not like you're gonna hand us a piece of paper, we're all gonna say, aye. This is
No,
gonna
no.
take some.
I agree,
No,
but
I really liked it. I
but
wrote
we
a lot
gotta
of
do
notes.
it. I mean,
And
it's
I
something-
agree, we have to do it.
I think the way I tried to word it was, if it's overfunded, it comes down in a reasonable period of time, and if it's
Got it.
underfunded, there's a set number of years.
Okay, perfect.
That,
So on your budget, now we're into this, on your budget, you put 11% on the town side. What's in the school side? Only 4.8?
I added to their budget.
So you added to their budget, so their budget now,
I added the cost to their
So-
budget, and then,
what's your
Deducted
agreement
from
then, if it comes in at 4?
no, they're at 11 too.
Yeah, but what's your agreement if it
But
comes in
that's-
at 4?
It comes in at 4, then they
What's
give
your
us the money
agreement?
back.
No, they don't have to give us money
I know
back.
they don't have to.
No.
So you have no control over that money that you put in their budget.
No,
So that doesn't work.
Well, but wait, our
wait a
agreement.
minute, but if we had an
our
internal
agreement
security.
is-
But it doesn't work though. Even that agreement, we don't have that agreement in place, but right now, we give them that extra 8% in their budget, 7% of the health insurance in their budget, and we can get 22 deans of students.
So you're, if I understand what you're saying, is take that money, put it over on our side.
Yes.
If it does come in at 11, give them the money.
Yes.
When we discussed it with
Increase the
them,
contingency.
uh,
Make
Give them
a
the
help, start
4.7 that they
a
requested.
bucket for health insurance that nobody can touch it. Don't put it in the thing, put it in
Yeah.
a fund, make a fund for the insurance. Just what this document's supposed to control, we should still make the fund.
I like
Because
that idea.
if you put the 11% in it, we can't get it back.
True.
We
um,
could get more snow blowers without control.
Without-
I do have to go
without the
there.
internal
I
service
knew
fund.
I knew we were going there.
Sorry, but I mean, that's the
No, I
reality.
just died.
No, I think your idea is a good one. We put it in call it what you will, right? We give them the 4.7 that they say is the average. And between 4.7 and 11, keep it on the town side, put it in a separate
So if it
fund.
comes in at 7, you fund it to 7.
Yeah, if it's 11, you fund it to 11. If it's 13,
Until we have a.
If it's 13, we gotta bite a bullet. I mean, that's the reality
Yeah.
of this thing. But that's
I
part
like
of
that
why,
idea.
again, everything has to be tight.
I think
so I.
there's a lot of things up in the air, which, some sort of predictive, and which is what you're trying to get to, but I don't know how. We gotta be able to say, okay,
So our discussion with them included the caveat, under the proposed internal service fund, once the budget is set, there'll be no savings in the Board of Ed or town budgets if the actual insurance rate is less than budgeted. So we did discuss that with them.
But you
that-
discussed it with them, but in the end, they could say, too bad, we're not giving you back money.
that,
We don't have the
If you
right
had
to
an
claw
internal
back.
service
They could.
fee and it was, I don't
But then
know,
you say, when they come for special ed, hey, you already got this
then
extra
if
money
we
over
need that,
here.
Yeah.
But we
But I
spent
like,
it.
I
But we
like your
spent
idea.
it. But we spent it.
I like your idea. I think it's a good idea.
for now.
so.
Well,
just
we have to
name-
be a little bit careful because
Go ahead.
we have, and I've seen it before, I had one town that wanted to take transportation and pull it over onto the town side. And the state said, no, that you can't,
You
you can't do
can't. State
that.
statute
You're trying to
10.220.
override
Yeah.
right,
You gotta be
state
careful with
statute,
that.
but we did, when we've met with them, we talked about that there. As far as we know, we're going with something like this, whether it's this one or not, and that's what we've all been assuming in our conversations. So I think that we're all on the same page.
There's also the
Yeah.
internal service thing.
And right now, their
Here,
budget,
that, so we're, right now, we think we're all on the
right
same.
now, their
page.
budget to us is at 4.7,
Correct.
What I'm
right?
hearing is unless we
But it's
implement.
they're
4.7 plus 2%. They're 6.7%. They're gonna be 6.7%. That's the reality of this. What the conversation we had tonight, the reality is.
No.
Special
For
needs
health
doesn't
insurance,
Oh, health
they have
insurance, okay.
budgeted
Oh,
4.7% increase.
Yes. I
Right.
apologize. Yes.
The budget I'm giving you tomorrow includes 11% on their side. But your point is, don't do that, because we don't know what the number is. Let them have the 4.7% increase that they've calculated based on prior years, and keep the 4.7 to 11%, that difference, on the town side. If and when it does come in at 11, we give it to them. That's what you were saying, right?
Understood.
Yes.
That makes sense if we don't implement an internal service thing.
It's the start of internal
If you
service,
do,
because that becomes
it's
the
just a
account.
contingency, yeah.
It becomes the account that Marcia's
still
looking to
lets
build
us-
a
it still
document
lets us
around.
put
Well, let's say we
figures in
did
it.
give 11 to both sides, and it actually comes in at 8, and we don't know until our budgets are finished. So we have 3% sitting there. That money should go into an internal service fund.
Right, but what the way we're
But we
saying right
can't
now.
take
Like
it from them.
jumpstart it. No,
We
they
have
would
no
have to agree to
vehicle
do that.
Yeah,
to
it's
do
once we
that.
give it to them, you
You
can't
can't
take it.
take
There's
Your
no
point, if we
vehicle.
kept it on our side, we could just.
The
Correct.
vehicle we have is we can appropriate
You
it.
can hold it and appropriate it as
Yep.
needed.
There's no vehicle, and that's part of what this fund is talking about. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were talking about having a unique fund for the Board of Ed, but I don't know if that's executable.
Well,
I think the outliers, the exceptions, the things that we can't control is a town-wide problem that needs to be solved.
True.
I don't think we should be siloing it.
I agree, that's why it should stay on our side. And then if it's a known cost that we know we have to cover. Nobody's shirking the covering of the insurance.
That's right.
It's a matter of the rules that are set up, that once a Board of Ed gets money, they don't have to give any back.
Yeah.
That is their money at that point, and they can spend as they see fit. And that doesn't mean they're gonna squander the money, and I spoke out of
No,
it.
no, no.
But they might find other needs that they feel, but doesn't fit the big picture of the budget process.
Yeah, but to Marcia's point, there are state laws about how much we can manage that, so we'll double check that, but I like the idea. I do. I'm gonna leave
But
my
then
budget as it is.
How are you gonna manage it otherwise? Then explain to me how you manage it otherwise. Because if we give them 11 and it comes in at 4, how much money is that? $300,000? What are we talking about? The amount of dollars?
Their total increase is 469,
So big number.
right?
$500,000 you're talking. How are you gonna control that money right now?
The paper said it goes into a Board of Ed specific internal service fund.
Marcia, can you pull up the?
Protected
Yeah.
there, that's what the
so
paper said.
there's.
I know,
the-
we haven't implemented that.
I don't know how to implement that, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right, but that's what it said.
Yeah, that it would go in, there'd be one internal service fund, it would have separate revenue and expense accounts for each side, so that we can calculate the fund balance, so that, if someone were to say, you know what, I'm gonna assume everyone is single, and they manipulate the budget that way, that, not they or I manipulate the
right.
budget that way, that, we're not sharing in that cost of poor planning. That, or if it's, we do plan perfectly, and there was, last year I think it was, where all their new people came in with family rates and all our new people came in with single rates, that, we're not sharing in that difference. That, and that's why the separate allocation of one fund, but separate allocation of fund
The
balance.
question is, if you do this and it comes in less, are both sides compelled to not spend that money and put it in the fund?
No. They're compelled, but they're not mandated.
That's what I want, mandated, whoever,
Well, the town
legally
side-
required to. And if they're not, then we're, this whole thing is a fool's errand, because we're doing something that has no teeth. It's unimplementable.
But the town side has to go through an approval process to move money from line to line. So, I mean, that,
But the school does too, just like so.
I guess
It-
they're doing their part and we're doing our part.
Yeah.
It's
But
just,
and to Steve's point, or whoever's point it was, that, all right, you need more money for special ed. I mean, I think we've built all this on working together, that, we could have it a policy approved by all three boards.
So, I talked to John Perrell on this. So the original Board of Ed budget is $54.8 million. Their increase in their health insurance is $489,000. We're decreasing the OPEB contribution by $100,000, right? And I lowered their overall budget by another $170,000. I've asked them to take a hit on their overall budget of 0.03%, 1/3 of 1%. So their new budget would be 55,039 with the changes I've made. Now, the OPEB, we know, based on my budget, we're just not
But-
gonna
but
fund
we're-
that.
But we're funding budgets with money that might not be there. That we're funding budgets with money that could disappear next year. The market goes down, we gotta fund. And we've talked about this, so we're funding money with imaginary money. It's real money, but it's imaginary. That we're taking a chance. We're paying less into the bucket.
We do the same thing with interest income. We've got $1.6 million in expected interest income. You know what, the markets will fall apart. Interest rates would go to 1%. Possible? Is it gonna happen? I doubt it. We're taking an educated guess on where these things are gonna end up. And I think they're very well-educated guesses, right? We run risks across the board on these things. Health insurance, interest income, all of these things. We run the risk and we take a conservative view of it and make our best guesses.
So you think it's appropriate, you're a little nervous, and I think that's what
Yeah.
March 10th, 11th, and 12th are for.
And to your point about the ADAC, I will point out that we do it in 2-year increments. So we have the ADAC for the pension fixed for 26 and 27. So it would be a 28 year.
Change.
And if there was something where, when we had the huge earnings one year, they do try to smooth it, so it's amortized over 5 or 7 years. Any big, all swings, you'll see it on Exhibit 1 of our financial statements that we have money in there, both sides for the pension to, as revenue and, liability and an asset revenue that's gotta be amortized and losses that have to be amortized.
We have to go through this in detail.
Right, no, I'll make a motion to adjourn here in a minute, but one more point is, are we funded on the fireman's pension? We were underfunded on another pension, so we're
We
robbing
always
from
have-
one pension, why aren't we funding another pension and finding cost cutting?
We are
And I'll end it on
funding, we
that.
are funding the low side. right?
Can we put a pension, maybe this pension healthcare specific as an agenda item on one, because
Yes.
this maybe needs to be done by itself. I think we should have that on one of the days.
All right,
Maybe
and that,
in the
Well,
second week.
one of the days, the 12th, is our regular meeting. Just so you
So
know,
we
that
could
was
do
gonna be
that.
one of
We
them,
can
so
add
we
to
can
that.
do a meeting
Oh, yeah, we
and
can
still
do that.
deliberate, but that
Okay,
would be a
let's
long.
do that though, because this is.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Obviously.
all right, then I'll make a motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was gonna say it first.
Say that. It's all good. It's all
You're
good.
having too much fun to leave?
It's all good.
So you wanna hear a fact that sounds.
Not
more
yet,
exciting?
not yet, not yet.